Good morning, everyone. We're starting the meeting. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the June 3rd meeting of Burbank-Glendale-Pasadena Airport Authority. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Brown. Here. Commissioner Adams. Here. Commissioner Garpetian. Commissioner Sinanian.
Here.
Commissioner Tornick.
Here.
Commissioner Devine. Here. Commissioner Madison.
Here.
Commissioner Wiggins.
Here.
Commissioner Selvage.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, and today's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Commissioner Paula Devine.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. This item passes unanimously. We are going to take item number 6 out of order, so we're going to take item number 6 next because I realize there are a lot of concerned individuals in the audience, and I assume, or based on information, I believe that most of them are here on the noise concerns item. So why don't we do that? That's a yes, yeah, it's a resounding yes. Why don't we take item number 6 first? We have a report from our staff, and then we'll take public comment on it.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are here to give the Commission a staff report regarding the community noise issue here in the LA Basin. As we start out, I will go over some of the history of what the Commission and what the airport have been doing. As we all know, there were 2 Special Operations Committee meetings that were conducted at the Buena Vista Library here in Burbank. These were held in the evening to make it as convenient as possible for everyone to attend that wanted to attend. The Commission also hired an independent contractor, Langeman Brown, to review what was happening. Obviously, the complaints of more noise impacts around the area where there had not been noise before, or at least the frequency of the noise seemed to be increasing. And the result of that study by Langeman Brown did indicate that there had been a change. Didn't identify exactly how those changes were made.
Can you speak up? Yeah. Folks.
Okay.
Much better.
Hope this is better. As I was saying, the report from Langeman Brown did identify that there had been an increase in noise.
It did identify in the
Yes.
positive. So
Yes, it did.
Yes.
And, but did not specifically, indicate all the noise coming from one airport, but certainly that the residents were experiencing more noise than they had in the past. The airport and the Commission also sent letters to the FAA. A staff letter went out in August of 2018 with comments on the proposed amendments to the departure procedures with some recommendations for the FAA to make some considerations of how to direct traffic. In December, Commission President Sinanian, per Section 175 of the FAA reauthorization, requested evaluation of the feasibility of dispersal headings or lateral track variations to address the community concerns. In March of this year, the acting FAA Administrator, Daniel Elwell, responded to that letter and said that FAA will prepare an environmental assessment of the proposed amendments to the OROS and SLAP Open Standard Instrument Departure Procedures from the Hollywood Burbank Airport. The EA will evaluate environmental impact of the amendment, proposed procedures, and reasonable alternatives, and that the FAA would consider our comments regarding the feasibility of dispersal headings or lateral track variations during the EA process. At the meeting we had 2 weeks ago, the community expressed concerns that they were being told that there were that the FAA was undertaking a study of what they called a hybrid approach to the departure of aircraft, and concerned that by doing so, moving too quickly, that they would not consider the impact that might have on the Burbank Airport operations. The response was that we did contact the FAA. They explained to us that They were indeed looking at some changes at Van Nuys, but not along the accelerated track that the citizens are concerned about. Last week, the regional director for the Western Pacific area of the FAA sent a letter to Senators Feinstein and Harris saying that the FAA is aware of the residents' concern, but states that this accelerated approach is not the case. There are potential adjustments to one, and recognize that potential adjustments to one airport's departure procedures do not preclude adjustments to the other airport's departure procedures as well. Before implementing any change, the FAA would comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and its public involvement requirements as part of the FAA's environmental decision-making process. The FAA would also follow FAA policies and guidance regarding community engagement as they go through this process. The administrator continued to say that the FAA is preparing to begin an environmental assessment of proposed amendments to the OROS and SLAP departure routes for Burbank, as was referenced earlier. During this EA process, the FAA will consider reasonable alternatives to the proposed amendments. FAA does not yet have a timetable for completing the EA, nor have we heard of any timetable to begin the EA. The FAA is examining potential adjustments to certain Van Nuys Airport departure procedures. The FAA is still working to determine whether any of these potential measures are feasible, and again, they do not have an implementation schedule for any changes to Van Nuys. We recognize here at the Hollywood Burbank Airport the importance of engagement. During the past few months, at the direction of the Commission, we attempted to organize a meeting between residents, the airlines, and the FAA. While we thought we had everybody in place, all parties seemed to be in agreement. Just days before the meeting was to take place, the FAA said that based upon their requirements, they would not be able to participate in the meeting as it was currently structured. Staff also contacted Van Nuys and LAX to organize meetings to discuss noise impacts, again, because this does include the entire LA region, recognizing that the three airports are connected through air traffic control in the LA basin. Both LAX and Van Nuys declined to participate in those meetings. So our next step is staff will take the lead to organize a forum to discuss the noise issues. Staff will establish a formal structure that meets the requirements for participation by the FAA. We find it extremely important that the FAA be a participant in this. They have requirements that we are looking at right now as to how we move forward. And we do recognize the importance of moving this initiative along as quickly as possible. And to the extent that we can, as we want to make certain that we can get the FAA to participate, there may be some conditions that will not allow us to move as quickly as we would like to, but we take it seriously, and we will make all efforts to make sure that we can get this accomplished and get the forum up and running as quickly as possible. So going forward, for the duration of the forum for the issue that we are now discussing, the Commission agenda will include a monthly staff report to make sure that you are aware of where we are in the process as we create this forum, to ensure the participation by the FAA, and then to work through the noise issues that are currently being identified. Mr. President, that is my report for this morning. As I said, there will be monthly reports to update you on where we stand with this. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer those.
Very well, thank you for that report. Do we have questions from Mr. Miller and staff? Okay, we'll go to the speakers then. You have a question, Mr. Salvage?
Yes. When do you think we will know what the form of this forum will be, the participants, and how it would operate, and what the outcome would be?
I'm hoping that at the next staff report, we will be able to provide more of that information. As I said, the FAA has provided us with some information. We're looking at other cities, such as San Jose, that have done similar type of meetings that we're talking about. How we appoint members to that group is up for discussion again with the FAA, making sure that as we do all of these things, we're making sure that we're not doing anything that would prevent them from being a participant.
And one other question, is there a model for these types of meetings, forums, roundtables, or whatever you want to call them, in which the airlines have representatives present to participate?
None of the information that we have seen indicates participation of the airlines, but it does include participation by the FAA.
Thank you.
Wasn't there a point a month, 2 months ago where we tried to broker such a meeting that would include the airlines, and it's due to the FAA's unwillingness to participate in that meeting that the airlines also stepped out?
That's correct. The airlines, throughout the process of trying to schedule that meeting, made it clear that they would want the FAA at the meeting. We are not saying that the airlines would not listen to what is being discussed at these meetings with the FAA in attendance, but none of the models, again, have indicated that they've actually had a seat as part of the group.
Very well. Any other questions? Okay, if not, we're going to move to public comment on this item. I want to tell everyone there's more than 40 speakers registered to speak on this item, so therefore time's going to be limited. I'm going to allow 2 minutes to each speaker, because that way we can manage this. And I appreciate all of you coming down and wanting to be heard. It's very important. Clearly, it's very important to you. I assure you it's very important to us. And we do want to hear all of you out. And we want this process to be resolved. We want this problem to go away as much as you do. As you probably realize, there's constraints that are beyond our control that we're trying to influence in the most positive way. We're doing our best, but you know what? We want to hear from you first. And we'll start with Los Angeles City Council Member Paul Krikorian. Mr. Krikorian has requested 5 minutes, so 5 minutes it is.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President Sinanian and members of the board. Thank you for hearing from us today. As the Los Angeles City Council member for the 2nd Council District, I have the honor of representing 270,000 people who live in the East San Fernando Valley, some of whom you'll hear from today. My district includes the neighborhoods to the north of this airport, to the west of this airport, and to the south of this airport. In fact, my district includes part of this airport itself. My district endures the final approach of virtually all arriving flights and the initial acceleration and ascent of virtually all departing flights. I know many of you, I've known many of you for decades, and I know that Burbank, Glendale, and Pasadena have been deeply engaged in airport noise issues for many years, and that each of you has been a responsible leader of and advocate for your respective communities. But I think it's also fair to say that my district actually suffers far more from airport noise at this airport than do our neighboring cities. Yet my constituents have no direct voice on this board. So for that reason, I want to thank you very much for agendizing this issue and for listening carefully to my constituents and their deeply personal testimony about the very real harm we are suffering from the dramatic recent increases in noise impacts in many areas. There's no question that over the last 2 years, there's been a significant increase in departing flights over the neighborhoods south of the 101 freeway, and that those flights have been following a far more concentrated route over the new waypoints. We have all experienced it, and that fact was in fact confirmed by the Landrum and Brown study. The commercial flights are now initiating turns further south, which puts them over the Santa Monica Mountains hillside areas, which also complicates the problem and aggravates the problem because the hillsides are closer to the aircraft. That increased channelization has destroyed the quality of life for the residents in the narrower path. It has brought scores of low-flying departing planes directly over many schools. It has threatened air quality and public health by focusing jet emissions in a smaller area and below the mixing zone. It has destroyed the quiet and protected open space areas of the Santa Monica Mountains recreation area, causing harm to people and wildlife alike. And it has impacted countless lives in many other ways, which you will be hearing about today from the people who are bearing that impact. And yet, just last week, the FAA wrote to our senators of California saying without evidence, without basis, The FAA does not believe the implementation of these satellite-based routes had any effects in areas close to the airport, including Sherman Oaks and Studio City. Come to Sherman Oaks and Studio City, FAA, and tell us that. So to the members of this board, I want to thank you, first of all, for your December 10th, 2018 letter, President Sinanian, that you signed to the FAA under Section 175 in response to the issues that have been raised by my constituents and others. And I would ask that you join the City of Los Angeles in redoubling those efforts, especially in light of this attitude we're getting from the FAA. Please redouble those efforts to demand that the FAA provide immediate relief from these impacts. I and my colleagues on the council have been urging the FAA to meaningfully address the proposed changes to takeoff patterns of commercial flights, and in fact the existing changes, not just proposed changes. And I appreciate the fact that at our request and also at your encouragement, the FAA has made the decision to prepare the environmental assessment to evaluate the potential impacts of the proposed amendments to the two existing departure procedures. That's important. It's a crucial step to do that environmental assessment, and I'm glad we've achieved that small first victory. It's a crucial step, but it's not nearly enough, because it'll take a long time, as we all know, to get that environmental assessment done. And in the meantime, the people in this room and the thousands and thousands of people that they represent are suffering right now. So we'd ask that you join us also in trying to address the noise concerns and related problems that are currently impacting communities. Now, as staff mentioned, in response to a letter from our members in Congress and our senators asking for the Community Noise Roundtable, I'm pleased that that's going to be moving forward, and I thank you for your cooperation in that. I would ask that you continue to make every effort to engage these communities to the south and to the west of this airport that are being impacted by these procedures. Please continue to engage them in the greatest extent possible and engage us as the representatives of the City of Los Angeles. It's really important that these voices continue to be heard. The FAA letter gives, despite its rejection of even the possibility that there have been impacts in Sherman Oaks and Studio City, the FAA letter does give us a little glimmer of reason for some optimism, in that it says, during this environmental review process, the FAA will consider reasonable alternatives to the proposed amendments. So let's make sure that we get before the FAA every reasonable alternative to these proposed amendments. Let's continue to work together, Airport Authority and staff, the City of Los Angeles, the people of Los Angeles, and the people of your communities. Let's work together to continue to put pressure on the FAA to form this roundtable immediately, to formulate a solution for all of the airspace over the San Fernando Valley. I ask that you continue to support the City of Los Angeles in our efforts to get that relief from the FAA. I also ask that you support the City of Los Angeles in its appeal of the FAA's initial determination failing to properly respond to my Freedom of Information Act request for the information that's underlying these decisions and processes that are being put in place by the FAA. I'd also ask that you continue to put the most vigorous pressure possible on the FAA to ensure the implementation of dispersal headings, other lateral track variations, or modified takeoff procedures immediately to address community noise concerns while the environmental assessment is ongoing, not waiting the 12 to 18 months that it will take for it to be complete. So thank you. Thank you very much, members of the board. I appreciate your leadership, and I appreciate your being willing to listen to our concerns and take them seriously. Thank you all very, very much for having us.
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Patricia Hurst.
Two minutes, Ms. Hurst.
Following Councilman Krikorian's act, I just want to be very brief. I've been a longtime community leader and activist, and this is so disheartening. Disappointed but not surprised at the action of the FAA, and also with LAX and the Van Nuys Airport, not all sitting at the same table. It's so divisive. It's just unbelievable. I'm speaking as a property owner in the Santa Monica Mountains, which Mr. Krikorian related to. My elevation from my front door going up is 1,500 feet. So I am now seeing the friendly faces of the sky and the pilots as they come over. That's just a little bit too close. We have 8 private schools in Mulholland near the 405, temples and churches. This is a safety issue, a public safety issue, so my concern is dealing specifically with elevations and hours. Your administrative assistant, Ms. Kirk, has been most helpful to give me a phone number where I can reach her for additional information because you have a full agenda. And I have left her my card of a particular group that I belong to, which is the largest association in the state of California. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Next speaker, please.
Next, we have John Bick.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is John, and I live Ventura Boulevard in Laurel Canyon, approximately. And I'm motivated to be here after I read this letter to Feinstein and Kamala Harris. And the part about the letter is it says when they don't know when they're going to implement a timetable for this environmental assessment, and then a couple of sentences later, which I don't think was read out here, or actually the gentleman here did, when they said that the FAA doesn't believe the implementation of these routes has had any effect on Sherman Oaks and Studio City. Those two things sort of contradict each other. They simply need to come and visit our neighborhood to see how awful it is. It's truly awful. And after I read that last night and then heard the late JetBlue flight leave last night, because I pop on my flight app to see, who it is that's flying over at any time, I just found it, I had to be here, just to be one of the many voices that's going to speak out shortly. I made a couple of notes here. I came today because either that person who wrote this letter is lying, or they've never been to Studio City or Sherman Oaks, and they've never been there between the hours of 2 and 6:59 a.m. in the morning when FedEx and UPS send their 757s over and shake my entire apartment building. I'm a single dad that lives there with my 16-year-old daughter
You have 30 seconds.
who wants to go and stay with her mom because it wakes her up every morning and every night. So I could go through the rest of this, but now I got pressure. Also, Fryman Canyon, where a lot of us hike, is just all the squirrels are gone, the rabbits are gone, the birds are gone, the coyotes are gone, the deer are all gone. That's really rough. I hike there every morning and every night, and it's just changed dramatically in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
I'm almost done. The JetBlue flights are really rough. I mean, really, when they're delayed and they're taken off an hour or 2 or 3 hours late, the charter flights that leave at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, they're going to Fresno or Phoenix or San Jose. I've called some of those companies, ag companies that are doing work up in Modesto or whatnot. That's unreal. It just shakes our buildings. I'm almost done. Let's see here. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
Okay,
'cause they're
thank you,
all
Mr.
just gonna
Vick.
say
Your
the
time's
same
up.
thing.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Next speaker.
I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Roman Silber.
That's close. I've been called worse. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm a resident of Benedict Canyon, and we are the unfortunate beneficiaries in Benedict Canyon of both airports, Van Nuys and Burbank. As the speaker before me, we are also at elevation. And can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. We are also at an elevation and see Plains a lot closer than people down in the valley. Great sympathy for all of the impacted communities of Studio City and Sherman Oaks, but I wouldn't want anybody on this board to think that Benedict Canyon is not affected. We are in fact impacted by both airports coming over directly over the area of basically Beverly Glen, Benedict Canyon, and Mulholland. To the point about the use and enjoyment of our properties, I have a wife who has health issues. I have grandchildren who have health issues. This is very personal to me, and I know it's personal to all of you, that we can simply not enjoy the outdoor areas of our properties any longer. And to the point with regard to the FAA letter saying there haven't been any impacts, I'm aware of at least one website that has clicked in something on the order of 100,000 complaints a month since this has all begun, these changes in the flight paths. And so I appreciate all that you're trying to do. I appreciate the idea of a forum.
You have 30 seconds.
But I would like to also urge everyone here to share the same sense of urgency that these people here with me today have about this. This is not and should not be, and I urge you not to make it, simply business as usual. This is a matter of some urgency to all of us, not only with regard to the changes, but the existing flight paths. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Next we have Jane Go, and then Michael Fields.
Thank you. Ms. Go.
I don't think anyone uses snail mail anymore, but I'm happy to see you because I wrote all of you a snail mail letter wondering if Burbank was going to metastasize from an adorable beauty mark into a horrible cancer. You're very well aware of how painful this is for all of us who live in Studio City, so I don't need to go into all of that. We talk about departing flights a lot, arrivals also. I live actually in what would be more the flats near Universal Studios. I don't know when the arrivals are determined to come in, but when they do, they are even much lower. I'm getting flights 1,200 feet above. I was trying to do weeding a couple of months ago outdoors, and there was such a ceaseless arrival pattern that I actually was driven indoors. It was actually a little frightening. I felt like, well, this is what a war zone feels like. So I appreciate your historic interest in environmental and noise issues. And I know that the FAA is very, very recalcitrant and unresponsive. So it's going to take really very sustained push on your part to keep them moving. So I'm urging you to continue with that. And to all of my fellow citizens, if you have not contributed financially, I try to stay as close to my Social Security as I can. But even I have managed to contribute to the attorney that Studio City has engaged,
You have
who
30
has
seconds.
been successful in Phoenix. So we need that additional input to help the council. We need as many pressures on the FAA as we can get. So please, as the previous speakers have said, continue to be as forceful as you can manage to be. I know that you're trying to not expand, I think that's the wrong word, but reposition your terminal. That puts a lot of financial pressures on you.
Thank you.
Airports are not huge money makers, as it turns out, all around the world, especially small regional hubs. So I'm hoping that your efforts to find financing for that do not push you into acceding to the pressures from FAA and possibly the airlines to abandon any of this noise issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Michael Fields,
Mr. Fields, followed by
Eric Allen.
Eric Allen. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for
Good
your
morning.
time. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So I live up on the hills as well. So if you're going south on the 405 and look up by Whole Foods and Comerica, up that big hill up there, I live up on the top of that. You're going to hear from a lot of people today about sound recordings and photographs probably, but I just want to let you know I moved here 3 years ago in search of a nice, quiet place to live that was close to the city, and we both work at home, and it's just been a nightmare. We can't go outside anymore. An interesting anecdote was we've lost our owl. I'm not an environmentalist, like a crack environmentalist, but we had this owl we called him Horton, and he's gone. I haven't heard a coyote in 9 months. We had 2 pairs of red-tailed hawks. There's 1 pair that's gone now, and the other pair I rarely see. The planes are so close, I'm sure this is having some impact. But an interesting note also is that we got hold of a neighbor that we haven't talked to in years that lives over on Beverly Glen. They're moving. They said they can't. We said, why are you moving? You just bought your house 2 years ago. They said, we can't handle the noise. We're going crazy. We both work out of our homes. And did you see your pool? And I said, what do you mean? She said, have you seen the film on your pool? And I said, I'm not sure I have. So I turned the pumps off over the weekend. And honest to God, there's an oil film, and I'm going to get it tested. But it's obviously, it has this oil slick to it. It's not from anything other than petroleum, okay? I'm a pilot myself.
You have 30
a
seconds.
private pilot, and I smell aviation fuel when I smell it. Okay, so it is impacting, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fields. Next speaker, please.
Eric Allen,
Followed by?
and then Sue Ellen Wagner and Kimberly Turner.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for
Good
hearing
morning.
us again. So you all know my story. We bought our beautiful dream home in 2003. Right in the mountains, 800 feet up, gorgeous views, fresh air, lovely, quiet. And then 2 years ago, somebody started launching all these airplanes over our heads. My poor wife, who stays at home all day, I have seen a decline in her health. She's constantly exhausted. It's disruptive for our relationship, for our kids. As I said, it was our dream home. And a few weeks ago, just before I came to see you the last time, she said, maybe we should go find a new place. But we wouldn't be able to go anywhere else. I spoke to a real estate agent in our neighborhood, and now they have to declare the flight path. We didn't buy in a flight path, and that takes off $20,000 to $30,000. Well, that's what he said. There is no chance to recover. There's a constant onslaught. 11:09 p.m., 11:10, 12:23, 12:58, 1:18, 1:34. And then it stops maybe for 4 hours. Picks up at 6:02, 7:10, 7:12, 85 decibels. This is the view. This is what I see over my driveway.
You have 30 seconds.
Anyway, people who buy in the flight path know what they're in for. We didn't do that. We didn't buy near the freeway because we wanted quiet. And somebody unfairly has moved the flight path over our heads. And we pay a lot in taxes.
Thank you.
And I demand that you please continue what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sue Ellen Wagner and Kimberly Turner.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Sue Ellen Wagner, and this is Kimberly Turner. We are co-founders of Studio City for Quiet Skies. We greatly appreciate your placement of community impacts on the agenda, as we have long requested. We brought friends with us today. They are all looking forward to the opportunity to tell you about the crisis brought about by the jet superhighway that moved over their heads with no warning or study. We are suffering, and that is not an understatement. Everyone is here to ask you for your help, and we're going to ask you to do more. We are encouraged by the report this morning. It's nice to hear what's been going on. Thank you for that, and step in the right direction. I'm going to repeat what Raquel Gervin said, because it bears repeating. She thinks residents under the departure path are under some misconception because nothing has changed, stating the FAA does not believe that the implementation of satellite-based routes had any effects in areas close to the airport, including Sherman Oaks and Studio City. We are not close to the airport. This is a false and ludicrous statement. FAA is working on a quick fix for Van Nuys and at the same time denying that we have a problem and that anything has changed at Burbank. I think you all agree with me that the FAA is wrong, dead wrong.
You have 30 seconds.
Residents from Studio City and Sherman Oaks, as well as the Mulholland Corridor, Bel Air, Beverly Hills, Toluca Lake, are here today to tell you it has changed. We have proof it changed. The Landrum Brown study stated it changed. You admitted it changed, and you knew it was going to change. That next gen changes would mean that noise exposure for those living under the narrower path could rise. At the Burbank City Council meeting on June 17th, 2016, Director of Government Environmental Affairs Mark Hardiman was quoted stating a year earlier, due to a likely increase in quantity of noise, he requested that the FAA consider a hybrid path that is not concentrated. However, the authority chose not to follow through with that request, preferring to wait. The rest is history and resulted in our all-encompassing public health and safety crisis. So Burbank commissioners and executives, please do the right thing, own up to it, and don't let Burbank be left behind.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Kimberly Turner, co-founder, Studio City for Quiet Skies. Just to pick up where Sue Ellen left off, we're concerned that the FAA is setting us up to change one airport and not the other, and claim that they helped some people, actually very few residents. We fear that this is the FAA's intention, to choose the less impactful airport, make one small change, and then say that they've done their job for the community and that any further changes are impossible. We want the FAA actions at Van Nuys Airport to pause until Burbank can be addressed simultaneously. A piecemeal resolution to the San Fernando Valley jet impacts is a fatally flawed resolution. Please tell the FAA that the flight path moved and our lives have changed, and we want a simultaneous solution. We implore the Burbank Airport to pressure the FAA for a Burbank fix, just as LAWA BOAC effectively pressured the FAA for a Van Nuys fix. We have the same affected population that Van Nuys Airport has. We have populated neighborhoods in the Santa Monica Mountains, rarely impacted previously by jet noise, noise-sensitive open spaces, protected parkland, and elevated terrain, mountain and canyon acoustics causing increased volume bounce and sustained noise, a high fire hazard severity zone with limited ingress and egress for emergency vehicles, where a plane crash would result in catastrophic wildfires, homes, streets, and buildings, and even trees designated as historic and cultural resources.
You have 30 seconds.
Current noise complaints have increased to over 768,000. We can't all be under some misconception. If the FAA does not admit that there is a problem, we will not get a solution. A return to the historic way the beginning of the path was flown for decades would result in fewer noise complaints and solve this issue. I just wanted to say one other thing. We have more to say, but I'm going to get cut off. We did see that there's a SLAP 3 pending, 52120. Someone could please check out what SLAP 3 is. We would like to know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Turner. Mr. Miller, will you take note of SLAP? Mr.
Next.
Miller, will you take note of SLAP 320 and find out what that's about? Thank you. Next speaker,
Rosalind
please.
Dahl, and then Kathy Arnos.
Ms. Dahl? Okay, well, let's move on to the next speaker.
Kathy Arnos.
We'll give her a chance to come back. Please keep the previous card and call that name again. Thank
Good
you.
morning. I'm Kathy Arnos.
Good morning.
I live in Van Nuys. I get very emotional about this. When I bought my house 32 years ago, there were 5 to 8 planes that were landing a day. I live south of the corridor, the landing corridor. Today, there are planes every few minutes. I believe that this has impacted my health greatly. I think it chips away at us, you know, the stress level. I have felt subtle changes in my physical and emotional health, especially in my sleep patterns and stress levels. Since the recent change, I now live under what is called the X flight pattern, which is the planes landing, and now I'm getting them as they take off over my house. I'm also in the helicopter thing, and I believe that the noise and the pollution have chipped away at my nervous system, affecting my quality of sleep and impacting my lungs. I've developed shaking in my head and my neck, which at times is uncontrollable. I've tried everything to subdue it. I meditate twice a day.
You have 30
I
seconds.
eat very healthy, and I'm still being impacted. And so I woke up the other night at 10 to 1, 1:30, 3:30. You can tell the differences between the cargo planes, the private jets. And so I really appreciate you just taking the time to help us residents in the valley and to protect our health. And I'm also on the California Safe Schools Advisory Board. I think that this has impacted our children's learning abilities and their health greatly. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speakers.
Linda Clark.
Please.
Linda Clark. And then Ellen Byron.
Okay. Ms. Clark.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We really do need your help. I'm a resident of Sherman Oaks, the hills of Sherman Oaks. I'm very close to the 405-101 interchange, to give you an idea of where these Burbank jets, and I'm also, yes, radically impacted by Van Nuys as well, but I'm getting slammed by both. But I want you to get an idea of where I am. I've been a resident there for 43 years and never before, gosh, it's been a solid year, experienced anything like what we're experiencing now with constant jet traffic noise. Yesterday morning, there were 7 Burbank jets in 13 minutes, starting at 7:06 in the morning. Before, I've been using WebTrack, and I can look these, look it up to see what's going on. I've recorded other instances, 11 planes in 40 minutes. It's pretty frequent. I'm concerned at what I feel is a huge disconnect between what the FAA thinks is not going on from Burbank Airport, southerly departures, and what thousands of people across the valley are experiencing visually and auditorily, like other people have said. Yes, there has been a radical change in the path with adverse consequences. You're hearing about our concerns on fire zone safety. We're in a designated fire area, high risk.
You have 30
with
seconds.
Toxic emissions and whatnot. It's troubling that I think, and again, the proof of this change is the voluminous outcry to our local representatives, federal and state, is a testament to the fact that there have been changes. So with the expansion anticipated at Burbank Airport, we're feeling there's a real threat to our continued quality of life and, safety. So we need immediate relief and the recognition that there have been changes and your advocacy, please, on our behalf. Thank you for getting started in this.
Thank you. Ms. Byron.
Ellen Byron. And then Robert Brahman.
Thank you.
I went to a meeting. Can you all hear me? Okay. I went to a meeting where someone, one of the officials said that the FAA stands for Federal Airline Advocacy. And my belief is the airlines are complicit in this. And I shouldn't have to look up from my backyard and go, hey, it's American. No, it's Alaska. No, it's Southwest. It's Southwest. It's Southwest. It's Southwest. I would like when you have this meeting, I want the airlines at the table. And I think for all of us, we need to let the airlines know that if they want our business, they need to drop their arrogant attitude and come to the table and listen to the customers who are paying for their business.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Next speaker, please.
Robert Brahman, and then Julisse Bricklin.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Brayman. I'm a co-founder of Sherman Oaks and Encino for Quiet Skies. We're affected by both Burbank and Van Nuys. I'm sorry, yeah. My name is Bob Brayman. I'm co-founder of Sherman Oaks and Encino for Quiet Skies. We're affected by both airports. But we are discouraged by what we heard today, not from you, but we're very discouraged from what we heard as far as the actions you've taken, but discouraged to hear of the reception you got from LAWA, owners of Van Nuys and LAX Airport. Airspace above us, part of our problem is because of the congested airspace from all three airports and the constraints that is placing on the air traffic controllers. So we think the only solution that can come forward needs to be one that recognizes that exists. The other thing is, I would not give up on approaching LAWA to be a participant in this. We think that forum that you're talking about is the path forward. But it needs to include both LAWA, FAA, the airlines. There are certain things that can only be done by the airlines in terms of the climb gradient upon takeoff is their decision. It is not the FAA and it is not yours. They need to be part of this because they have to be part of the solution. So we think it needs to include them, it needs to include community representatives, and it needs to include all the stakeholders involved.
You have 30
I
seconds.
would encourage you to talk to Mayor Garcetti's office and push them along with the council district members to get action on this and participate in this, and they're the ones who could get LAWA to be part of this. But I think going forward, unless there is a concerted effort, the FAA will only use the fact that there is division potentially between the community groups, between the airports, as a reason for not taking any action. And they've done that elsewhere. We don't want to see that happen here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Julisse Bricklin, and then Stephen Bayo.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julia Bricklin. I
Hello.
live on Laurel Canyon, just below Mulholland, and to say that it sounds like we live in a war zone is an understatement. We no longer keep our doors and windows open at any time of the year. I was going to talk about the migraine headaches that my entire family, including my 2 young children, now suffer, and my husband, which shows you that it's not a genetic problem. We're not related as far as I know. And, but I'm not going to discuss those things or the fact that my husband and I, who both have home-based businesses, now rent an office miles away. And if you think that we're paying taxes on that business, you're wrong. We are writing it off. It's no longer going into the coffers of our cities. So I'm going to instead just build upon what my neighbor Ellen Byron said, which is if anything from this meeting trickles up to the airlines, I would like them to know there are a lot of decision makers in business in this room and in our communities, HR representatives, CFOs, CEOs. The first airlines that come to the table and speak with us and offer you some sort of solution are more likely to get our business when others will not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Stephen Bayo. Stephen Bayo, and then Elizabeth Gindros.
Okay, thank you.
I have a prop.
What's the problem?
But just want to introduce myself as Steve Bayo. Excuse me, got some allergy issues or plane issues. My backyard has become like a war zone, and I check my pool daily, and it is covered with soot. So it's affected me. I could barely speak, but I'm doing my best. I hear all this stuff about forums. I've been to many of these meetings, and it seems like we're walking on a treadmill. So I'm trying to figure out you know, we're all patting ourselves on the back. We're doing this great talk. What is it getting us? We got this, which is nice. This is great. We got a forum, which is great. But talk is cheap. It's time to take some action. Where do we go? Are you guys with us? Are you part of this team? I don't know. I'm not getting that feeling. I like that you're writing notes. I like that you're here. I like that we're getting this form, but it's not enough. Let me play, and I hope this works well. What we're hearing up where I live, which is Mulholland and Laurel Canyon, just south of Ventura Boulevard. Let's see if this works. This is my backyard. This is like, it's like being here. All day long, morning to night.
You have 30 seconds.
I said last week, I feel like we're at the airport. It sounds like that here. Another plane.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Elizabeth Gendros. And then Doran Kalper is next.
Thank you.
My name's Elizabeth Gindros, and I live in Studio City. I've been there about 21 years. And in those 21 years, we always had planes. But there was this feeling that we shared the noise. It wasn't redlined over our communities, over Carpenter School. Everybody had a little bit of it. North Hollywood had some. The North Valley, we had Valley Village got some, Studio City got some. Everybody had to take a piece of it. And now it is us. We are redlined completely. The quality of life, I don't even know where to start. And you've heard it. I can go on, but it's destroying it. We don't have it anymore. We can't go outside. You know, playing outside with my daughter now is, hang on, I can't hear you. Hold on, pause the conversation over and over and over, to the point where we just go in, because it's just not worth being outside. And I don't know what we're breathing. I know there's benzene coming down. It has to be. I can wave at them. It's that close. 218 jets a day, and not just jets, really. It's the GAs, it's the business jets, it's the helicopters. The jets are obviously the loudest, the most disturbing. Our sleep disturbances are unbelievable. My husband is suffering from depression from it. He's got his air noise button.
You have 30 seconds.
All night long, pushing it. Morning, he can't. He said, it's my only way to feel vindicated. It's my only way to have a voice, to push that button relentlessly so that they know I'm here and I'm not going to put up with it. It's not just, its altitude is a huge change. The altitude change is significant from what it used to be. The noise, that is such a big factor. So anyway, dispersal of jets, sharing the noise,
Thank you.
spacing it out, and altitude.
Thank you.
Doran Kalper. And then Michelle Florman.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I do appreciate the efforts that we're hearing you're making on our behalf. I think you're recognizing the extent of frustration from the people in the communities affected. I live in Sherman Oaks in the Santa Monica Mountains, and I'm hearing that far, far too many times every single day throughout the week. I would love to see an increased effort from the commissioners and all other parties involved, because we've seen essentially no improvement in the 1.5 to 2 years that this has been going on.
I don't know if any of you have ever experienced the sound of an incoming missile, but these airplanes, especially at the times when the wind conditions have reversed the pattern and airplanes come in for landings over our homes, it is very reminiscent of of the anxiety that comes from that kind of image of a missile coming in. Please help us. Please help us improve or eliminate the problem. And we can only do so much complaining. It takes the efforts of those with a vested interest to make changes. And so,
You have 30 seconds.
As Congressman Krikorian said, everyone needs to redouble their efforts, manyfold. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Florman, and then Gordon Wolf.
Hello, good morning.
Good
I'm
morning.
Michelle Florman. I've lived in Sherman Oaks for over 20 years. I wanted to be in a nice, quiet, safe neighborhood that no longer exists. According to the Noise Control Act of 1972, which was a national policy to promote a safe environment for all Americans free from noise that jeopardize their health and welfare. Well, where is that? I don't see it being implemented. I also have a new life, a stress guard for my teeth to keep me from grinding at night, and my inhaler. My asthma has returned after 45 years. Thank you. Just enjoying that now. But I want to know why we are trusting the FAA with their 737 MAX disaster and also their 787 Dreamliner disasters, why we are trusting the FAA to protect us. If the public didn't have a public outcry to ground the 737, that wouldn't have happened. It was the outcry of the people saying, we don't trust you. They have no credibility with us at this point. We just have no faith in them. What's the solution? You just got to go for dispersal headings and no wide U-turns over the mountains. It's like 900, 1,200 feet above my head at the most. We hear it. It's a war zone. We're being polluted. There's a filth all over the community. We're not supposed to wash our houses or wash our cars to save water. We can't keep our windows or doors open.
You have 30 seconds.
And the decibel level, yesterday I went out to test it. The ambient noise was 44. As soon as a jet went by, it was 85, which was beyond the legal limit. So I'd like to know what's going to be happening with that.
Thank you. Next.
Gordon Wolf, and then Matt Labatt.
Hi, Council. I knew I'd be here on time because I have a Burbank Airport alarm clock about 7 or 8 times between 7 and 7:30 every morning. And unlike most of the guest speakers here, I kind of feel like you guys are all complicit, and I'll tell you why. I think that when you represent a Burbank-Pasadena Glendale Airport Authority, your agenda has a priority of making sure that that entity is as profitable as you can make it, and generally that comes from what I surmise are increased numbers that I read about every few weeks in the Burbank Leader in terms of flights, in terms of passenger carries. So I think that you have a responsibility and an accountability to us. You've heard all of this stuff. I'm not going to repeat that, but I want to talk to each and every one of you about what your responsibilities are, which is that you're hearing right now. You need to talk to the airlines. I have a question for you. Why have the hours of operation that for so long lasted between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. been expanded to virtually, call it an 18-hour? When did that happen? And I know you always say, well, it's a voluntary thing. Well, you can't apply any kind of pressure to the airlines.
You have 30 seconds.
You have nothing to say about their scheduling. You don't talk to the airlines. They're the big bad boogeyman, along with demonizing the FAA, and you walk away like the Vegas Steelers. It's not my problem. Well, it is part of your problem, and I think you need to take responsibility for that. And I think you need to take responsibility and help us as good citizens of the valley. You probably, none of you live in the flight path. So I suspect you don't have any idea what it's like.
Thank you.
If you want reasonable alternatives to present to the FAA for this gentleman here when you schedule your next meeting, one, do the right turns earlier and get out of the valley quicker. And ask why you can't raise the altitude of the jets. Is that because the fuel burn is less as you get lower and therefore it's better for the airlines? Talk to them. Tell them that's not acceptable. I think you can do that.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Matt Labatt and Carol Elkind.
I'll try to read this quickly. Hello, commissioners and all. My name is Matt LeBate. I live in Studio City. I'm also a board member of Uproar LA. Thanks for putting community noise concerns on your agenda. I think this is a step in the right direction and is heartening to me in this era of divided politics. My condo is directly behind Carpenter School, which my son attends. I want to share with you today some verified data about the impact of noise and pollution effects on his and over 1,000 of his schoolmates. We all know studies that kids' learning and health are adversely affected by aircraft noise and pollution. Many people say come visit Studio City in Sherman Oaks, but I wanted to publish exact data for proof. So I built an ADSB receiver. For those of you who know, a receiver like this receives data directly from airplane transponders via a small antenna. So I have that on my roof, and I have a publicly shared Google spreadsheet that I'll be regularly emailing the airport and my local reps to show the scale of the impact. I started recording this data on April 26, recording only flights that are at or under a 3,000-foot mixing level, since that's where particulate and noise pollutions are the most negative. And as of today, in the past 37 days, I've recorded 2,700 aircraft that have flown within a mile of Carpenter School at or under 3,000. I've recorded the flight path image as well as the airplane details, altitude, speed, flight number, and will continue doing so. This is alarming to me since you can easily multiply this data out for the year and estimate the massive impact. Using the Blue Sky model of 53 pounds of CO2 emissions per air mile flown,
You have 30 seconds.
I've estimated in the past 37 days almost 50 tons of CO2 has been emitted over my house in Carpenter School. Obviously, these planes are also emitting noise, which is another study I'll be working on. I'm sharing this data so you have verified information of the impact, and I have faith that you can do more with the communities and the FAA to fix the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Carol Elkind and Matthew Yedlin.
What's that second
Hi,
name?
I am Carol
Matthew
Elkind.
Yedlin.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate a few things. Thank you for listening to us. We absolutely need your advocacy. Obviously, we need all the help we can get. Supposedly, these flight patterns are a trial, and they don't have to be this way. Okay, we do need to go back to how they were before, and we need you all to be good neighbors. Maybe you don't live in our neighborhood, and you're thinking, gee, I'm kind of glad I don't live in the south part of the valley right now, but please be thinking that you can use your position and your job as you should to kind of do the right thing and stick up for your neighbors and the overall urban area that we live in. Let's not keep making it worse. This has really been detrimental. You've heard a lot already. I'm just going to add to it that I live in the flats near the mountains, and it's also very bad there. The noise, I don't think in the modeling that the FAA did, I don't think they took into account, truthfully, how the noise bounces off mountains. I don't think they even put the mountains into their model. It bounces off the mountains, and it rolls, and it vibrates, and it reiterates, and it goes, and it goes, and it's basically a form of noise torture, kind of like dripping water torture. So it affects a lot of areas that you're hearing about, and again, thank you for listening, and we can use your help.
Thank you.
Matthew Yedlin, and then Mary Kate Harris.
Hi, I live in Studio City in the flats south of the freeway, and I can assure you that we get it just as bad as people in the hills. It's a nightmare for everybody. We get every plane over my complex before they head into the hills. And I think that every one of you here, sitting here, is complicit in this. That's just my belief, that you are complicit with all of our suffering. We have commissioners here, even before that, I can't let you off the hook. Don't insult our intelligence and say that you don't have any sway with the FAA. You are current mayors and former mayors, council members. You have a lot of clout, and the proof of that is that you work with the FAA to make sure that they do not fly over your cities that own the airport. And a simple solution is open up the skies. Have planes take off to the north. There's no excuse why you can't do that. Northeast over your area, southeast. Why can't you at least have at least some of the burden? And I know a lot of people here have really been pissed off, and they wanted to do a group action suit against the FAA, against the airport, against you individually, personally, because that's the only way to get your attention. And I'm really wondering if you really care. You have your cushy, posh neighborhoods. Do you even care about what's happening to the thousands of people suffering around you? No. I want to see hands of anyone who actually does care. I want to know. Now, the camera is not on them, so just for the record, nobody raised their hands. Not one person here, which shows what we are up against.
Thank you.
They do not give a damn, and the proof is not one of you raised your hands saying that you care. What? You tell me, what is your gripe? Tell me. Come on, what? You did not raise your hand when I asked you.
Mr. Chairman, the process is not, we're here to listen to you, not to engage in an individual debate.
Well,
all of us do care. Your comments are outrageous and ill-informed.
Well, this just shows.
I'll be delighted to listen to everyone here
but tell me
respectfully
specific, where
and
was
then
I
respond.
ill-informed?
I'm not going to engage in a one-on-one debate with you, pal, but we will respond in terms of what the overall approach is. I'm not going to engage. It's not
that
the
you
appropriate
live in a
process.
cushy,
Please
posh
finish
area?
your comments. And when it's
Okay,
time for us
I
to
got
comment, we'll comment.
what I expected
Thank you.
from you. I was
Next
hoping for
speaker,
something
please.
different.
Mary Kate Harris. And then Kim Biddle.
You're a tough act to follow, Matt. So I have here, and many people have and have quoted from it, the lovely letter from Raquel Gervin. Gee, I wish she could be here, or someone from the FAA. I thank all of you for listening to us, for opening up your meeting's agenda to us. Two words that Councilman Krikorian brought up really resonate. Destroy, yes. What has happened with the noise from this airport has destroyed our quality of life. And that is what you are hearing. The other word was relief. And that's what we want and need. And now, I have watched my husband, who is normally a calm, quiet, collected gentleman, literally, seriously become unstrung. We don't sleep. We have huge stress and anxiety. So thank you, Burbank Airport Commissioners, for that. I'm also hearing and seeing the kind of exasperation, anger, and pain, physical, emotional, mental, from all of these attendees.
You have 30 seconds.
This has been, well, thank you so much. This has been visited upon us for over a year now. We can't sell our homes, certainly at any cost, at any price, that would be commensurate with what we paid for them. And with that money, where would we move if our careers require that we stay in this area? So yes, destroyed, relief. Please fix it.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Kim Biddle. Kim Biddle, and then Michelle Cantor.
I'm going to read pretty quickly because we don't have a lot of time. Thank you for putting this on your agenda. Our group, Upper LA, and members of the public have been seeking help from you and the FAA for a long time. Burbank's response to date has been to deny there's anything new or wrong happening hourly over our once quiet community. Burbank has refused to further engage with us, the impacted residents, families, children, and environmentalists. Requests for information routinely provided by other airports, like the number of noise complaints by zip code, were routinely denied. Therefore, members of Upper LA were forced to make more formal requests for information. One Burbank email produced in response to these requests was shocking. It was dated February 20th, 2018, from Daniel Fager, former executive director of Burbank and 30-year employee of Burbank, to Commissioner Tornick. Due to time constraints, I will read the relevant portions. Dear President Tornick, I watched with interest the February 20th Commission meeting agenda item on a joint letter with the City of Burbank regarding the impacts of NextGen on the surrounding community. It was not clear from that discussion whether or not you were apprised of the numerous legal committee meetings held several years ago that had publicly agendized discussion about the then proposed NextGen departure tracks. At those meetings, the committee was advised that there would be an increase in impacts on residents living directly under the NextGen departure tracks, and that there would be a reduction for residents living away from those departure tracks. The committee was also advised the FAA was willing to entertain the idea of making the NextGen departure tracks start at a distant waypoint away from the airport and allowing the existing departure procedures and flight tracks immediately near the airport to remain status quo prior to the implementation. You may want to talk to Mark Hardiman since he was in attendance at those meetings. Because of the lack of direction from the committee regarding whether or not Burbank Commission should seek this, quote, preserving status quo on the initial departure tracks, the matter was not acted upon. And now, a couple of years later, concerns from the impacted community are, as predicted, coming true.
Thank you.
I'm going to finish. I waited a long time. So what does this show? It shows Burbank staff and Burbank commissioners were told and discussed the fact that there would be an increase in noise for some residents. You knew there would be a change and a new problem and did nothing, and yet you still deny anything's changed. Mr. Fager noted the committee was told the FAA was willing to start the NextGen departure tracks, the ones currently decimating Studio City, Sherman Oaks, Toluca Lake, and so many others, at a distant waypoint, allowing the status quo to remain. But for some unknown reason, Burbank, you ignored a solution that would have helped so many people in our community. Your commission never acted to preserve the higher altitude, more northern historical departure tracks, and now we are all suffering. Not from a mass delusion, but from the Burbank authorities' failure to request that status quo of not decimating our homes and parks at low altitudes remain. There is something very suspicious and wrong happening here. Look how both the FAA and Burbank are handling this issue. There is a blindness and a level of denial that is astounding, coupled with an unwillingness to do anything to alleviate the suffering of so many in Studio City, Sherman Oaks, Toluca Lake, Mulholland Corridor. You have not even in the tiniest bit tried to help us, and we have now learned you could have helped us and chose not to. But we know what you care about, your new terminal, and we will challenge it with everything we have if this destructive flight path is not corrected now.
Please stop.
Do you really think we will take anyone's word at this point that this is not an expansion and will not lead to even more suffering? We will not stop until this horrendous new path is corrected. This is your second opportunity to correct a grave wrong and finally take action to protect tens of thousands of people. Please take it.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Michelle Cantor.
Folks, stop.
And then
Please stop.
David Kimball.
Just hold on a second. Don't start. Please limit the applause. We're trying to move this process forward expeditiously. Please limit the amount of applause. Please start. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I've been angry for a long time, but I'm turning into a complete depressed mess. I am begging you to change the new satellite-based waypoints. I am so tired. I'm tired of waking up in the middle of the night due to planes flying so low over my home that they shake the pictures on my walls. I'm tired of calling your voicemails. I'm tired of sending you emails and not even getting a response or an automated response. Wow, thank you so much. It makes me feel so much better. 24 hours a day. They are 1 minute apart. I live 800 feet in the mountains. We bought our house almost 2 decades ago for the quiet. It is not quiet. This didn't happen when I purchased my home. My life savings has gone into this home. Every day I'm awakened by jets. This morning, thank you, I got to sleep in till 5:38. That was awesome because I took 2 Benadryl last night because I'm turning into a druggie. I am anxious all the time. Yesterday, we had people over at our house. 303, 305, 312, 318, 319, 321, 324, 327, 331, 336. Such a relaxing Sunday by my house, by the pool. I am exhausted. I'm in a constant state of stress. And then when I drive to my beautiful home, I see an airplane coming right over my garage, and it makes me so sad. My daughter, studying for her AP exam, her first AP exam, stayed up till midnight. 5:13 she got to sleep in because of FedEx. This is not a way to live. I can't do this anymore. And the FAA says they don't believe this implementation of the new waypoints are doing anything. They're lying. Please, 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 help me. Help me and my family. Please, you're killing me. Honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
David Kimball.
Next speaker, please.
David Kimball, and then Stephanie Bayo.
Are you listening?
David Kimball.
Hello, I'm the aforementioned formerly calm husband of one of the previous speakers. And she's right. I never used to be the guy sitting in the back yelling out bullshit. Or I'm the guy sitting there and saying, tell that asshole to shut up. Okay, now I've become that asshole. And it's because of listening to flight after flight after flight, 1 minute apart, 2 minutes apart, not being able to sleep, constantly stressed out, angry, as I am now. It's affecting our daily life between me and my wife. We're tense. We get annoyed with each other. I get annoyed with people for no reason. And I realize I consciously I'm not annoyed at this person for this thing that's happening. I'm mad because of the bloody planes, but I have there's no way to get that anger out in a constructive way other than coming here. And I don't want to be here today. We actually left town for 2 weeks just to get away from the noise, just to get a break. And we came back and we found out about this meeting while we were away. We came back 2 days early just so we could be at this meeting. We spent much of our time looking at real estate in the other area. Our planned trips, our vacations now, are solely going to places to find out if that's some place we can live, because we can't live here anymore. And the only thing that's stopping us from picking up right now is the possibility and the hope that this will be resolved. We've lived there for 30 years. We've put our lives into our house. We used to sit out on our patio almost every day if the weather was nice. Even if it wasn't nice, because we had heat lamps. We would sit out there and have a cocktail, have dinner. We got to know our neighbors from that. We haven't sat out on our patio for 3 years now.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Stephanie Bayo, and then Clarissa Lurkenfeld-Keller.
Next
Okay,
speaker.
Clarissa Lurkenfeld-Keller. Yes. And then Stacy Slichta.
Hello, I really want to thank again for listening to us. That's a step forward. and a lot has been addressed already. I recently got an air button. If you don't have it yet, that's your fastest way of tracking the noise. We are at 14885 Round Valley Drive. We literally have the planes above our house. One plane comes from Burbank. Same time, hopefully at a different elevation, we have the Van Nuys airplanes. And they are literally above our home. I have a record here from a few days ago. There was a plane out of Burbank at 7:46 on May 20th. It was at an elevation of 1,350 feet. We are at 853, which is a huge jet at 497 feet above our house. A lot has been said already about the continuous noise. Here, 1 minute, we have May 22nd, 1930, well, 7:30, then 7:31, 7:33, 7:34. That is 4 huge commercial jets out of Burbank in 4 minutes, 1 a minute. We talked about the health. I'm going to reiterate it because so many people are affected by it. The emissions, people get lung cancer from it.
You have 30 seconds.
Thank you. And the fact that Burbank, who is getting all the money, Bob Hope Airport, you let the planes fly above our communities. Take a fucking left turn, excuse my language. Take a left turn. Fly above your own community that gets all the money. Why do you pollute us with noise that is highly stressful? People die of lung cancer because of the emissions. That's a fact. We used to have deer. We built actually our house. 13 years ago we moved in. We had a deer population come regularly into our yard. None of that is happening anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Stacy Slichta. Stacy Slichta, and then Jeannie Love.
I just want to go back to a point that Mr. Miller made earlier, that there are no scheduled procedures for Van Nuys. All you need to do is go on the FAA's website, and they're on schedule for October. So if I can do a Google search, I would really hope that the executive director for the Burbank Airport could do that as well. This is also the executive director of the Burbank Airport that had said in the last meeting that I spoke at that he was in constant contact with the FAA and had meetings with them, but he knew nothing about the hybrid fix. So I'm not really sure what you're listening at or what you're hearing, but it's a grave concern of mine that somebody who is running the airport is giving either misleading information, or you're not getting the right information, or you're not doing your due diligence. Any one of those 3 options is worrisome for me, my community, which happen to be outside of your walls, which is my biggest point. You're concerned about your walls. And I did a little bit of due diligence on this, and I looked and I saw a wonderful woman named Aubrey Ford, which you're all worried about. I hope you're taking notes about what I'm saying over there, because I saw you checking your email before, which was fantastic. On January 16th, she came and spoke to you about the noise problem that she was having. She's at Burbank Airport. On the 2nd of February, you guys had a special meeting with her. This is a few short weeks afterwards. On the 20th, noise was on your agenda. And you're saying people at Burbank don't get special treatment.
You have 30 seconds.
I say you're wrong and you're lying. I've been up here multiple times. Several other people have been up here multiple times. People from Quiet Skies have been up here multiple times for years. Did we get a meeting in 2 weeks? No. Did we get a special treatment? No. What we're getting is you don't have a problem. We don't know what's going on. Some of you have mentioned, well, maybe there is something here and there. Again, I have my big girl pants on. I can take it. You guys haven't responded to anything that I've sent to any of you, and I still hear crickets.
Thank
and
you.
to me, again, rude, disrespectful. I represent thousands of people, as well as I work with LAUSD, and this has to stop today. This is wrong, it's rude, and it's inconsiderate. Step up to the plate You're not going to hear the rest. You're never going to hear the end of this from me until you step up to the plate, get out of your box, and start looking at the people outside of your walls. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Jeannie Love, and then Lynn Rembert.
Hi, Jeannie Love. You
Hello.
must be sick of me because God knows we've been, I've been here for 2 years now fighting with all of these fabulous people. Can I pass this out? Can you?
Of course.
That's just a random couple of pages that I've gotten from Air Noise because I also got sick of calling and complaining about how bad the noise was. Never got a return call. I live at 4357 Backman, Studio City, right near Woodbridge Park, Tehunga, where you used to walk and eat and enjoy and have your kids play. I can't go outside in my backyard and be in my pool anymore. It's disgustingly dirty. I've been to all those meetings at the FAA, and at the FAA meeting, I'm sure a lot of you guys were there, it was a joke. Half of you guys absolutely left, and I actually talked to one of, I won't point you out, one of you guys who actually said, well, the head guy, he's the mayor of Pasadena. He would never let this happen over his house. So, I have to concur with everybody else. You really don't care. I have not seen one thing, not one thing. Also, I talked to an FA guy out of John Wayne Airport. I guess they're richer than us over there. They actually, planes will take off at a higher altitude.
You have 30 seconds.
Not to disturb their residents. I brought that up to the FAA and to a couple of you guys, and they were like, oh, that'd be expensive. But they do it out of John Wayne. I guess they have more money or more voices. I think now we need to raise up. I fly a lot. I have stopped flying out of Burbank Airport. And I will pick up anybody from LA Airport now because you guys don't give a crap about Studio City. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Lynn Rembert. Lynn Rembert, followed by Peter Baczynski.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear me? Yes. I moved to the San Fernando Valley in 1953 with my family. My husband and I have lived in the Toluca Lake area for the past 22 years. And the last couple of years, the noise level has been awful. The supposed voluntary hours are 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. So those 4:28 flights, 10:30 p.m. flights, maybe don't get the idea what voluntary is. Can't you go back to the previous pattern where it was spread out, everybody got a little bit, and then we wouldn't be having this problem? The noise issues seem to be swept under the rug, and people, the rug is run out. Please don't say, my hands are tied, it's not my job, or I'm just following orders, my favorite. We need to get into the C words. That's courtesy, cooperation, compromise. There's a difference between legally right and morally right, and I'm hoping that you choose the fair one on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Peter Baczynski, followed by Susan Ashley.
Good morning. I'm Peter Baczynski. I've lived in Sherman Oaks and Studio City for 15 years, and until last year I had 0 plane complaints. Since last September, I probably log about 4,000 complaints a month. I appreciate you putting the noise issue on the agenda and recognizing that it is a problem because that's the first step in fixing it. Obviously, the FAA doesn't think there's a problem. They don't think anything's happening. But I want to just go back to a couple of points from the Landman Brown study. Runway 15 departure RNAV was implemented March 17th as part of Metroplex. Once the procedure was published and pilots began using it, the flight path became more concentrated than the previous, more dispersed method. While relative frequency of flights has remained consistent, There's been a greater proportional increase of flights and an increase in frequency of flights per hour over the south of the 101 freeway. These increases are attributed to Metroplex and the use of the RNAV procedures. That's directly from your own study. So these are the facts. We can dance all around who says what and what they believe. This is real. Thank you for recognizing that. The FAA doesn't put us, the neighborhood, in their calculus. We're not a partner with them until we become the flying public. You are their partner, and we need you as their partner
You have
to
30
fight for
seconds.
us. Okay, so Burbank's always wanted to be a good neighbor, and we need you to be a good neighbor now. One way to do that, go back to the dispersal heading. Now, the other thing is in the FAA's report, according to FAA departure procedure, the first turn is to 210 degrees. And then turn north once the aircraft reached 3,000 feet above sea level. Now, most of these aircraft, here's a snapshot of May 24th, 1 out of 5 of these aircraft are turning north at 3,000 feet.
Thank you.
All of these flights, once they reach the 134 and the 101 intersection, everybody's about at 3,000. All the jets. But they're not turning. They're coming way into the Mulholland Corridor, way into the mountains, and the elevation is coming up, so their relative height remains low. If everyone will start turning, we're going to solve a lot of this problem. Get them up in the air, get them turning. It's the FAA's own procedure. Thank you for your time, and please, we're counting on you. You are their partner, and ours by proxy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Susan Ashley. Susan Ashley, and then Kajara Boriak.
Hello.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I used to be a very pleasant person, and normally I would stand here and say thank you for your time. I'm too exhausted. I'm too sick to be pleasant anymore. I bought my house 4 years ago. I've lived in the Studio City, Sherman Oaks area for 15 years. Planes have never been an issue. They are so low and so loud over my home right now. 200 planes a day, starting at 5:45 in the morning, ending at 1 a.m. I've got it on WebTrack. I can't sleep. I've been to my doctor. I am on Xanax to relieve the stress and calm me down. I have a heart arrhythmia. There's a study out of Switzerland from 2008. People who live underneath a flight path have a 69% increase in mortality from a heart event than people who don't live underneath a flight path. It's because the constant noise and stress elicits your flight or fight response. This triggers stress throughout your body constantly. It weakens your ability to fight and save your life during a heart attack. My mother died from cancer. When I bought my home, I was very careful to not buy near a freeway or an airport. I am 10 miles from your airport. You are now polluting me every single day.
You have 30 seconds.
I have the black silt on my pool. I am ingesting jet exhaust from 200 planes that average about 35 to 4,500 feet above my house every single day. I just very quickly want to add, I hope you're all aware that jet fuel, the particulate matter in jet fuel is jet exhaust is 1/1000th of a width of a strand of hair. It is so insidious because when you inhale it, it can actually go through the lining of your lungs and into your bloodstream, and it is a known carcinogen. I have all this documentation. And again, if I could Google all this information as a layperson who's never been in your industry, I would think that you all who work in this industry would know these facts off the top of your head.
Thank you.
You are poisoning me, you are stressing me out, and all these are disease-causing. And I implore you to stop, and you can. You can work with the pilots. You can have quicker turns. If this was happening to you, your loved ones, you would do something now. Finally, I'd like you to treat this as the emergency health hazard that it is to the residents. This is an emergency, okay? This is not something we can roundtable and talk about for another year. This is a health crisis, and we need it to be treated as such. I thank you so much now for your time, and I just really hope that you will do something, not in 6 months, today, this afternoon. Make it happen, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Kajara Boriak. And then Leslie Pollock.
Do we have Ms. Boriak, Kajara Boriak? Or Mr.?
Leslie Pollock.
Okay, we'll take Leslie, sure. Ms. Polyak?
I echo, can you hear me? I echo everything that my neighbors have been saying. I moved here from Northern California in 2000. I've owned my home on Laurel Grove Avenue in Studio City for 17 years now. And, you know, I've worked hard my entire life. I built a nest egg for myself and my autistic daughter, who may never be able to work full-time, and myself in retirement. Today is my 70th birthday, and I'm here. This is what I'm doing on my birthday. And that nest egg includes the equity that I have in my house that I bought 17 years ago. That equity is dwindling as we speak, as the values of our homes are declining, and we must now reveal the atrocious level of noise we are subjected to day and night, or be sued for not disclosing this to potential buyers. I am a taxpayer and a homeowner. We live in a country where our voices are supposed to be able to be heard, yet all we hear from the FAA is that this escalation is our imagination, that nothing has changed. With over 770,000 complaints on airnoise.com alone, I respectfully submit that this is no one's imagination. Something has changed, and our peaceful neighborhoods have become a war zone of noise. I implore you to intervene in this atrocity. I refuse to fly out of Burbank when I travel as a result of this.
You have 30
and I won't
seconds.
fly the airlines guilty of participating in this absurd barrage of planes flying overhead. We have a growing war chest of money for our legal defense should it come to this, and I believe it will. I don't know what it's going to take to get you people to listen to our complaints and do something about it, but I assure you we will stop at nothing to have our right to peace restored in our lives.
Thank you.
Thank you, and happy birthday.
Alex Isbicki, and then Lisa Carlos.
Hello, thank you.
Hello.
I just want to mention that, first of all, as a real estate agent, I ask everyone, don't sell, stick it out and fight, because what's going to happen is you're going to be replaced by people that are already used to this nightmare, and they're going to be okay with it. So don't let them off the hook, please. I'd like to mention something regarding this new toxic highway that has been established over our homes. I believe what's been mentioned already by all the prior speakers, that what has literally happened overnight for us is that you've brought noise, pollution, air particulates, and other contaminants over all of our homes during a narrow strip of flight path. This can be resolved, and it must be resolved, because let me tell you something. These flight paths, not just with passenger jets, but with commercial jets that are going to be carrying all of your clothing, all the products you use, every single personal item you have is going to be coming in vis-a-vis Amazon and other carriers as all of our retail stores are closing. So if you think it's bad now, just wait a couple more years until these highways over our heads are going to be completely inundated. You haven't seen anything yet. That's why I ask you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I would like to echo what someone else had just mentioned. We need an injunction now. We need words that will not wait for our federal government to work at a snail's pace and
You have
come to
30
some kind of
seconds.
conclusion in 18 months. We are suffering now. So we ask from this meeting and from the results of all of our testimony here that you will come forth and come with a solution where we can have an injunction as to what is happening now, and we can at least revert to what has already been established as far as flight paths in the last year, 2 years prior to this nightmare beginning. So I thank you again for listening, and again, I encourage everyone to keep fighting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff Road, and then Natasha Voigt.
I'm trying to figure out, well, first thing I want to tell you is it's really nice to be here at Burbank Airport where we can finally appreciate peace and quiet, right? I just can't figure out one thing. How come in the time that we've been in this room, we've heard maybe 4 thunderous explosions over us, but at my house, starting at like, what is it, 7 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, this just starts and it's every, 30, 60, max 90 seconds for hours. How can that possibly physically be? And I want to tell you guys something. We are not exaggerating. I look here, and you have to realize it's very easy for us in the room. I'm not going by my notes here, and I'm just winging it, but it's easy for us to look at each one of you and think that you're evil, heartless, cruel human beings, the same way we feel about Raquel Garvin, who lives in Pasadena, by the way. She must have a beautiful morning today. And it's easy for us to look at you. It's hard for us to look at you and not think you're cruel, horrible, disgusting human beings, because we have been forced out of the use of our homes. This is eminent domain with no compensation from the government. And here's who's doing it to us. You guys are. If you go on WebTrack, I did a full day, I call it a Memorial Day Massacre, where I did a full day of WebTrack. You guys will all see it, and I'll tell you how you can see it, but I did a WebTrack video where I compressed the whole day, and here's what we see. We see an attack out of Burbank Airport. The planes come straight out of Burbank Airport, and they attack the Santa Monica Mountains, and you guys got to realize we are Studio City and Encino and Sherman Oaks, but it's this huge, gigantic swath of the Santa Monica Mountains. You are sending these missiles out low and loud over Studio City to do these massive U-turns really low. I'm 1,300 feet above beautiful, gorgeous Mulholland Drive, right? We love Mulholland. It's California. It's Hollywood. You've destroyed it. You actually have already taken care of your airport runway renewal, because you guys actually took your runway and you put it over Mulholland Drive. You're doing your U-turns. Hey, you know what? If any other foreign country were doing to us what you guys are doing with your planes, the government of the United States would call in the Air Force to shoot those planes down. Low, loud, I'm 1,300 feet. If you're 2,000, you do the math. And here's what we hear. That rumble all day long. The destruction of our ability to live in our houses. Now back to my notes. I know you guys are probably not evil, and you're not horrible, and you don't deserve to get hit by trucks and all the other things that I say to my mom when I'm talking to her on the phone about the fact that my single greatest investment in my life and my future and my retirement is being destroyed by each and every one of you and Gervin and what's the Elwell. Beautiful Elwell, who's going to go out, and they'll go on to be lobbyists and make millions and millions of dollars because of their connection to the FAA.
Thank you.
Now let me get nice. Thank you for hearing us. I think you could get that this is the destruction of a lot of really nice people's lives. And if you guys and your kids and your grandchildren were living in the torture, it goes from Laurel Canyon on one side to the 405, and by the way, it starts Ventura Boulevard and goes all the way to the top of Mulholland, and you're attacking all the way down to the reservoir on the south side of Mulholland. Those communities are destroyed because, not because of you, but you guys have the power to help us. So I would love to get down on my knees, just like a former speaker did, and beg you. I'm not going to do that, but I am begging you, please, please, this is our lives. It's our home. It's our children. It's our grandchildren, and it's every single day. You guys got to wake up in a quiet house. Raquel Gervin got to wake up in a quiet house today. We are in blitzkrieg war zone. Go look at the videos of World War II blitzkrieg. This is what we hear. This is what we're living through. Thank you for listening.
sir.
Please help us and do it quickly. Do something to make them stop. Oh, by the way, what happened to planes? This is 2019. Why can't they go up? Why don't planes fly up?
Thanks.
Natasha Vogt, and then Lori Caden and Jody Caden.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hearing our complaint. I'm here as a Studio City homeowner, as an advocate for my community, and as a mother of 2 children, one of whom has special needs and a compromised immune system. A lot has been said already, and the points that I want to reiterate is that my house shakes when airplanes go by, and that did not used to happen when we moved in 6 years ago. It's really unpleasant, to say the least, to sit outside. One of the things that we value about our Southern California lifestyle, I think, is the indoor-outdoor lifestyle we get to enjoy. That's kind of gone away, really. Sitting on a Sunday afternoon in our backyard, and just my children, they don't have phones yet, they play outside. The impact is significant. Now, not to mention the impact on our health, not just with sleep, obviously, which affects everything, but all the things that we can't see and we can't quite feel right yet, but we know that that's happening in our lungs. So, I mean, I'm looking at all of you human beings here. I don't think you're evil. I don't think you don't care about things. And I would like to implore you all as decision makers and as human beings to look at this problem and think about the impact on our health and not be on the wrong side of history here. Make the right decision and help us to make these problems go away. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lori Caden and Jody Caden.
Hi there, my name is Lori, and I live on Mulholland Corridor. Coming to the airport today, I feel like I'm at home, as if I'm sitting in my bedroom, because this is all that I hear. And I have to say, there is one word that I have to describe this whole mishigas going on, which is unacceptable. My sister and I went on, we do Fryman Canyon over the weekends. Yesterday, we were there just kind of to unwind and relax, as we do on the weekends. It's 7 p.m. in the evening, and in 41 minutes, we counted 25 airplanes. That has been our new normal. I have 2 young kids, and instead of playing Monopoly and board games, they do what they like to do is now they count the planes. And while it is not easy to get a clicker or be sitting by your computer every 1 minute for the complaints are almost at, I think it was 1 million last time I checked. Another thing is I had a Memorial Day barbecue this year, as I do every year. But 4 of my good friends had to leave the barbecue with their kids because it was too loud for them to be outside. So 12 years ago, I moved to a cul-de-sac for peace and quiet. I talked my sister into moving on the block from Michigan. We moved our parents out here because they're elderly. Both of my parents wear hearing aids, and they are looking now to move because every time they're at home.
You have 30
retired.
seconds.
Every time they sit at home, every minute or 3 minutes that the plane flies over their house, they have to lower their hearing aids. So it's become a real health issue. I have never had problems sleeping ever before. The last 2 years, I have to take a Lunesta every night to go to sleep because I think that I have post-traumatic syndrome from airplanes going. That's all we hear. I literally had to get out of town this weekend to get away from the airplanes. And as we were walking around in San Diego, we're like, I think it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we're like, this is so nice. We have not heard one airplane. That's what wakes us up at midnight, every night. So I would often leave my office early to come home to spend my time with the kids, so I would take some conference calls at my house. I tried to do that the last few months. I can't hear a damn thing, inside or outside of my house. I cannot even have a personal or business call in my house. This is no quality of life. And we are begging for relief from both airports, from all of you people sitting here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So many years ago, I was diagnosed with something that's called tinnitus, which is noise and ringing in your ear that you hear constantly. And I said to the doctor, am I going to hear this forever? Because I don't know that I can stand it forever and ever and ever. Now I feel like I got it back again. All I hear all day long are airplanes. It wakes me up at midnight. It wakes me up at 5:30 a.m. every single solitary day. And it's not fair. And so what I want to do today, and I'm being very serious, is I want to ask all of you to join me at my house for brunch, just for an hour. I will have some nice mimosas. We'll have a nice time by my pool. I would like you ladies and gentlemen to hear what we've been talking about. I'd like you to experience what we're experiencing. Because unless you do that, we can stand up here and it sounds like we're complaining an awful lot, but it affects our lives. It affects every moment that we're at home. And because we own businesses on Ventura, we hear it every moment we're at work. And then we go exercise in our neighborhoods, outside, and we hear it then. There is no escaping it. Like the noises I have in my head. There is no escaping it. And it's not fair to do to a community, to any community. So I'm going to leave my name and my number and my address for each one of you. And I'm really hoping that this Sunday you could come to my house and spend an hour there and listen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janine Milne and Deborah Smith.
Ms. Milne?
Hi there. My name is Janine Milne. I've lived in Studio City, just right by Ventura Boulevard, just a little bit north, for about 19 years now. And honestly, the difference is as all of my fellow community members have said. However, unlike the lovely lady who invited you all to brunch at her house, I think that that's not really necessary. You're in the business of airports. You're in the business of knowing flight paths. If you take a widened flight path with higher altitude flights, which has been the traditional way, as other people have mentioned, we in Studio City hear some airplanes and it gets diverted throughout the valley. When you put way paths that are at Carpenter or at Buckley are flying directly and taking that wide path and narrowing it and lowering the altitudes, you know that a community is under fire. You know that exactly what she described is what all these communities are feeling. I also sit on the board of an environmental community group called Save Coldwater Canyon. This is but a tip of the iceberg about what Burbank, the FAA, and the airlines are going to see from this community. Organizations are going to be involved. Health ramifications are so dire, as has been described, that I can't imagine there's not going to be lawsuits. There is organized boycotts being talked about for this airport. So you are going to lose a lot of money. And this community, as you can see, as I said, Save Coldwater Canyon, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, there are so many organizations that these people are just seriously a tiny fraction of what is going to be leveled at this problem that you can simply change by going to historic flight paths on a wide angle and high altitude flying.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Deborah Smith, and next Jennifer Saunders.
Hello, Deborah Smith. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
The airport authority's mission statement says, and I quote, "while being a good neighbor." And I'm hoping that's why we're having this meeting today. I'm hoping you do care about being a good neighbor. And for years, we have gotten along well as neighbors until the FAA decided to change everything. And what the previous speaker spoke about, the concentrated flight paths, are what has caused this huge, enormous uproar in your community with your neighbors. There's people here that represent thousands of people who are very passionate about this because it is destroying our quality of life. And we implore you to be a good neighbor, as your mission statement says, and help us fight the FAA to go back to sharing like good neighbors do. Share the flight paths, so it's not concentrated in a very narrow specific path, and it's not low flights that are really, really hurting people. So once again, I ask you to be a good neighbor and help us in this fight.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Jennifer Saunders, and then Roy Wiegand.
Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, thank you for hearing us out. I signed up to speak because I had the misapprehension that not enough people had signed up. So I'll keep it brief. I've been a homeowner in Studio City for about 20 years. I bought my dream home in the Silver Triangle area, about a half a mile from Carpenter, right nestled in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains, about 2.5 years ago. So my market timing sucks. Since that time, I've learned that I can't open my windows, particularly at night when I like to sleep with my windows open. I don't know my neighbors because we really don't go out into our backyards. I bought my home because that's where I work. I can conduct workshops and hold sessions as a psychotherapist out of this glorious office space above my garage. But with more than 2 people in the room, I still can't open the windows because of the sound of the jets going overhead. And even with the windows closed, during a session with a client, when we get to the deep, deep emotional moments, the gold of these sessions, we have to wait for Southwest to go past. It has affected adversely and substantially both my personal life and my professional life and my business in Studio City. I'm not sure who it is who's responsible. I don't want it to become finger-pointing of the Commission versus the FAA. What I do want is it to be very clear that we have been adversely and significantly impacted. I think we bear a disproportionate amount of the burden of the benefits that are otherwise running to this airport.
You have
and
30
assistance.
seconds.
Thank you very much for hearing us out.
Thank you.
Roy Wiegand. Roy Wiegand and Heidi McKay.
Good morning, Roy Wiegand, Burbank for Quiet Skies. I am a Burbank resident. I'm kind of sorry there weren't more Burbank folks here today. Most of them seem to have rolled over, a lot of them anyway, after years of mixed messages from our good neighbor airport, which I do love, and I love using the airport. I can walk here literally, and I do when I use the airport. But I do want, somebody did steal my thunder from Studio City a few minutes ago and talked about the new terminal. For people that aren't revved up enough about keeping their foot on the gas with your issues, which are ours, by the way, in Burbank, for those that live near the airport. The new terminal that we have coming, it was sold to the Burbank voters as approximately $400 million, the cost. The estimate now is $1.25 billion. If you don't think the airport is going to want to make their money back on that, and whoever gives them the dollars for that, which, by the way, we were told it wouldn't cost Burbank residents anyway, anything on it. It comes from tax money. Well, I pay taxes, so it's not free. You got another thing coming. A gentleman talked about the new air cargo and Amazon, everything. That's only going to ramp up. And again, don't fall for the 14 gates for 14 gates. That was sold to the Burbank voters. That would limit expansion. Well, a much more efficient 14-gate terminal can turn planes in and out much, much faster than what we have now. Right now, we cannot put 14 Southwest jets wingtip to wingtip. We will with the new terminal. Please keep your foot on the gas. I love you guys for being here. We've been sounding the alarm way back 3 or 4 years about Measure B, which was the terminal expansion. We felt it was totally unnecessary. We love the airport the way it is. I challenge you to find anybody who says they don't like flying out of Burbank, they'd rather go to LAX. That was our contingency from the beginning. And as far as
You have 30
pollution,
seconds.
thank you. Somebody brought up pollution. A neighbor kid of ours won his science school project. The air just south of the airport here is on the level over a 3-day study in March, not even when the air is bad in the summer, at the equivalent of New Delhi, India. So this is going on. We brought this to City Council in Burbank. Thank you for coming. That's what we get normally there. And I was heartened to see Paul Krikorian here. You are getting some help from your elected officials. Unlike us in Burbank, that's why we need your help to do our job here in Burbank to hold them accountable. So thank you. Please keep your foot on the gas and giving your time. It's awesome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Heidi McKay. And then Eric Robinson.
Hi, I'm Heidi McKay, live in Studio City. I wrote this several hours ago, and everything I'm about to say has been said, but it bears repeating. I've lived in Studio City in my home in the hills for 25 years. I was never able to look up and identify a plane flying over my house until several months ago. I was never awakened at 6:30 in the morning or after 10:30 at night. There has been over 700,000 complaints on an air noise app over the last several months. So to say that the new flight path does not affect people in Studio City or Sherman Oaks, I think one can see from the people in this room that that is not true. And if this meeting was not being held at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, you would probably need the Dolby Theater.
John Gordon. John Gordon. Mindy Mann.
I'll be quick. I wrote something out. It's been said so much more eloquently than I can say it. But all I want to say is that the sound of these jets is not like ordinary sound. It's not like the sound. I live right near Laurel and Ventura. Amazingly how quiet it is in my backyard. But when I hear this, and then the descending sound, especially at night, when it sounds like a plane is going to come down out of the sky. And we know that a couple of those 737s did come down out of the sky, very close to the takeoff point. So I feel, sorry to say it, among other things, rattled by the idea that these giant airliners are just overhead, and it's just terrible. We do need some relief. If you folks had a jet superhighway put over your houses, and the number of planes that would fly over your house was 150 to 200, you would understand. Let me just say this. The jet sound lasts for about a minute. Just take a minute, multiply that by 150 planes, and you've got 2.5 hours of, do the math.
You have 30 seconds.
2.5 hours of solid jet sound. That horrible, frightening, heart-stopping sound, not to mention the pollution, not to mention all the other things that these wonderful people have said. If you had held this, like was said before, this meeting not at 9 a.m. on a Monday, I have 5 friends who couldn't come. It's just terrible. I'm looking at you all and speaking into your hearts. You're all human like we are, and you know what we're saying. You understand our pain. Something has to be done. We know the planes can take off to the north. They do it under certain wind conditions where the wind is not even that great. If you could take off the planes to the north, that would solve the whole problem. I don't want my house soundproofed and have to stay in my house so that I don't have to hear these intrusive, barbaric sounds. I want relief. I want it to go back to the way it was. We all feel the same way. Thank you very much. Please hear it, feel it in your heart, and try to help us.
Thank you.
Mindy Mann. And then Janet Colton.
Hi,
I live in Benedict Canyon, and I am on the board of the Benedict Canyon Association. Also, I'm a representative to our neighborhood council. I also happen to write our newsletter. Everything has been said already, so since I'm near the end, I would like to be clear on a couple of items. First of all, for those of you who don't know where Benedict Canyon is, we are actually south of Mulholland. So when other people have talked about the Mulholland corridor and it reaching Mulholland, my home, I've lived there for 30 years, we're actually south of Mulholland. So when you talk about these planes hitting the Mulholland corridor, it reaches way beyond south of the corridor. So that corridor is now not the beautiful Mulholland corridor. Yes, it's beautiful. That is now a flight corridor. And when we look up and see those flights reaching us, they're actually going way south of Mulholland. It seems like daily they're flying further south. And so the people who are suffering much further south of Mulholland. That's the scope of just how far that suffering has gone. I don't know what that number is of the population of how many people are suffering. If you were to take Studio City, Sherman Oaks, probably even somewhere into Encino, because when a plane is flying over the 405, it doesn't stop in terms of the noise of the 405.
You have 30 seconds.
We're talking about a huge amount of people that are suffering and whose lives have been affected adversely by this. But the other point that I want to make, and I'll try to make this quickly, is that when you talk to some people, I'm sure we've all had this, and they say, oh, it's just NIMBYism, someone has to suffer. Well, we did not buy into our areas knowing that we were going to be near the airport. We're very far away from the airport. And we bought into an area that was going to be beautiful, that's a wildlife corridor, and we wanted to have peaceful, quiet areas where we could enjoy nature, and we've all complained there is no nature. We don't see the kinds of animal wildlife that we used to have.
Thank you.
It's all gone. If we would have bought near the airport, we would know what we were buying into. And that's not what we purchased when we purchased into the Benedict Canyon, the foothills. So it's not fair to say that it's NIMBYism, because this is not what we purchased. And I would also like to say, my guess is that if I purchased a home near the Burbank Airport, because I've been flying out of the Burbank Airport for a long time, when I'm near the Burbank Airport, it doesn't even sound like what I hear every single day in my home. So please, go back to what we used to have 2 years ago, before Metroplex, because it seemed to function just fine 2 years ago when you flew north and not south, and when you were flying higher. So why you had to change, I don't understand. It seemed to be just fine a couple years ago. So I please ask you, go back to what you used to do a couple years ago. And I think you'll have a lot of happy people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Janet Colton. And then Annie Fitzgerald.
Hi, I'm Janet Cohen. I've lived in Studio City, lived and worked in Studio City for about 40 years. And there's nothing else that I can say that hasn't been said to you already. You've heard so many heartbreaking stories here today. But I think, to me, if I feel that you have some motion on this, that you're actually trying to do something for us, it would make us feel so much better. And I think that if we don't feel that, we'll be vehemently opposed to any expansion of the airport. Because something that hasn't really, well, it's been touched on a little bit here is the cargo, is the freight. When I went to the meeting about the expansion of the airport in Glendale, you talked a lot about the passenger terminals, but you did talk about the fact that the freight facility will be expanded. That didn't talk about how many planes will go in and out of there. If an expansion happens, I would imagine it's going to be more planes too. So my feeling is that, please help us, reach out to us, find a solution for this. We're not asking for the planes to go away because we know that won't happen. We just need some relief. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Annie Fitzgerald, followed by Edith Brickta. Annie Fitzgerald.
Ms. Fitzgerald?
Edith Brickta.
Hello, my name is Adita, and I live in Benedict Canyon. And again, it's just astonishing to me what people have said, and I will echo all of it. My husband wears hearing aids too. He now turns them off, so our communication is pretty bad. I work from home. I actually record voiceovers. I moved to America when I was cast to play Princess Diana on an NBC series. And I've had a, interesting run of it, culminating in a lot of voice work. I can't record now because I have to stop every other word because there's a plane overhead. And we call them the red bellies now, and Alaska, and you know what the red belly Southwest. I mean, it's like, and this kind of gesture is become kind of customary. There are a couple of things, though, that strike me listening to everybody speaking. Somebody mentioned shooting. We have a couple of neighbors who are a little bit mentally unstable, and I know that in America there's a lot of shootings and arms. I'm really worried that somebody's going to actually start doing that for sport, because there is a lot of anger in the neighborhood, and the instability and anger mixed in with the frustration of nothing being done. It wouldn't surprise me. The other thing wouldn't surprise me of a collision. We also have Van Nuys jets and Burbank jets overhead that are so close. I sometimes think they're so close to colliding over our wildlife corridor that will ignite because of the brush, and the sound is bouncing, so it's extra loud. And then there's one main thing that strikes me now. There are a lot of residents who are telling you what to do. Surely you are the experts and the professionals that have the power to actually change something. Wouldn't it be a great feeling for somebody to actually start that? Do you know how popular you would get? And you would feel so good about yourself because the community would be so thankful. Because it's not just about expansion of business, but it is also about accommodating the people that already live in these areas, that are trying to work, live peaceful and healthy lives, and everything is being threatened. Wouldn't it feel really good if this afternoon you took away all these experiences and everything that you have learned, and you would actually make something happen? Because something has to happen now. Nobody can take it anymore. I'm seeing people going crazy, and the craziness isn't even at its biggest point, because I really think there is a great threat of how people are going to react. And I think it's really important that somebody stands up and does something positive. Please.
Thank you.
I thank you for the opportunity to try and say something on that note, and hopefully we'll see some action. Please.
Thank you.
Valerie Ianello. Valerie Ianello. And then Casara Boreal.
Ms. Ianello,
Ianello or Casara Boreal.
Ms. Boreal, or Mr. Boreal.
Michael O'Hoven.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to us. Has all been said. I'm at the very top of Studio City as well, bordering beautiful, once peaceful Fryman Canyon. I'm not going to bore you with my kids not being able. I have 8 and 9-year-old. They're not sleeping. We're not outdoors. You heard it all, the pool situation. But what I want to say to you, please, I truly believe you're much more powerful than what you are trying to let us on here. And I'm truly asking you to action right now. The one term that was repeatedly mentioned today, which is as horrifying and sad it is, was a war zone. Your airport has put us into that war zone. In a war zone, we have only one choice, which is we have to fight. So please, I'm asking you to either fight with us and for us right now, or you have to fight against us. And your airport has destroyed our quiet. We are not going to go away quietly. Please action. Please talk to your airlines right now. I think there must be ways that you can use to convince them to use either other flight paths or fly higher, faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Charlie Jennings. Charlie Jennings and Amelise Bester.
Mr. Jennings.
Amelise Bester. Annalise.
I invested in a house September 2013. Oh. I invested in a house 2013. Location Encino 91436 area. Due diligence entailed speaking to my neighbors. 40 years that they have owned their homes that surround my immediate boundaries. The airplanes were definitely not there 5 years ago, 4 years, 3 years ago. And then on certain days, over 240 airplanes. I wake up on a daily basis feeling like or rather at the end of the day, I feel like I've disembarked from 18 hours of flight, like it feels like I'm coming out from an airplane and then spending the night in an airport for 5 hours. The Metroplex FAA air routes were ill-conceived. It's affected, and I'm sorry, people, I've heard Pasadena. I've spent probably every weekend since 1992 in Pasadena. The airplanes are flying low there as well. There's definitely been an increase in Pasadena by the Art Center where I went to school. Just an idea to consider. I did work on a mobility project when I was a student 15 years ago at the Art Center. It's the #1 transportation design department.
You have 30 seconds.
They worked on what is a mobility problem. 2 weeks ago, Ford sponsored. There was City of Tomorrow. Thinkers came together. I know the head of the transportation design department, and we can, for long-term planning, and we already know that the request has been for an immediate solution, but long-term planning, LA historically has not been known to have been well-conceived or well-planned. And so please, this is a two-pronged, I'm asking you for two-pronged strategy here, short-term and long-term, and reach out to Pasadena Center of Design's transportation head. He would be more than happy to allocate probably an entire semester with students to help come up with what is a huge mobility issue. They've already started working on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel Cohen and Rosalind Dahl, if she is still here.
Thank you. Got the pop filter back in place. I live in Sherman Oaks, Studio City on the line, and I'd like to basically reiterate what everyone has said. You've heard it ad infinitum, but that's because it's true. And I would also like to say that this is not a NIMBY issue. It's not an inconvenience. It's not a minor thing. It's not a matter of properly distributing things and nobody's happy. This was a mistake. Poorly conceived, poorly executed, and the response, with respect to everyone here and all the other constituents involved, the FAA, has been crickets. We're appreciative of this forum. I know it sucks to sit here and get fried by all these people, but this is the job. And right now, you're falling down on it. We all understand where your authority begins and ends, but that doesn't mean you lack influence. You need to exert it. I'd also like to make a quick point about the Burbank Airport's relationship to the surrounding communities. A lot of this has been couched in terms of being good neighbors, and that's laudable and good. We all should be good neighbors, but this is something else. We're your customers. We contribute to your tax base. We shop here. Some of us work here. Some of us live on the edge of this place. We are not a separate community. We're not another country. What happens here and what happens to us happens to you. And that will end up that'll end up affecting your tax base. It'll have an impact that is far-reaching. And I guarantee you that mollifying us as neighbors as a nice gesture is fine. But it's in your selfish best interest to address this fully and completely. Unless we forget, these are imaginary lines in the sky. This is not infrastructure. They're not concrete bridges. All of that is BS. The whole problem is process and red tape. That cannot be magically made to disappear, but you have influence over it that no one else has. And that's why we're here on fire. We're mad at you, but we also understand that you're human and there's limits to what you can do. But within those limits, you must step on the gas. Tomorrow's not good enough. You should leave this meeting, sit down at your desk, make notes about what you can practically, achievably accomplish today. Because the alternative is an
Thank you.
ironclad promise that we and the tens of thousands of people that we each individually represent will do everything we can to crush the expansion of this airport.
Thank you.
I will spend what I've got. So, in short, we're begging you for help, but you'd be well advised to take our concerns as a threat to the future growth and success of this airport. And we are, by the way, again, we use it, we're fans of it, it's great, but this needs to change, and the process has got to happen faster. We need your help. The alternative, again, is pitchforks and torches at the gate. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing your experiences, which are unfortunate, and for having your voices heard once again here. It's very important that we hear what's happening there. And we, despite what some may have suggested, we do deeply care about what's happening, how this is impacting your lives, your daily lives. And no one is under any misperception that this is somehow a NIMBY issue, that this is a manifestation of NIMBYism. We don't think you're exaggerating. There's really nothing that we need to be convinced of. I'm telling you this with all sincerity. We understand this. I mean, this is evidence of how bad it must be. This is something that's destroying your quality of life. We know it. We realize it. Several of you said, just go back to the way things were before NextGen, before Metroplex. Let's. We would love that. I mean, as much as you don't need this problem, you don't want, I mean, obviously, we don't need it either. I mean, this is, no one asked, it's being said that we were asked and somehow we didn't act, or that somehow we were, complicit in all this. That is simply not the case. If we could change things, for things to go back to the way before they were 2 years ago, we would do it. But we can't. We can, because then, please, we can't have a dialogue. You spoke, we listened. You wanted us to speak, now I'm speaking. Our colleagues will speak as well, please. We can make decisions, we can pass resolutions. An airport authority does not decide how planes fly, what their flight patterns are. The decision would not be worth the paper that was written on. That's just the sad fact. FAA tells the airlines how to fly, that's how they fly. So we're all looking for a path to get this accomplished. We're looking with you, and we're trying, and we'll try more, we'll try harder. But all decisions, all solutions go through the FAA. That's the path. If you ask me, do I have a clear understanding or a clear vision of what that path exactly is? I don't. I don't think anyone does, but we do know that it means working closely, intensely, applying all kinds of points of pressure. I think someone used that expression on the FAA, but that's the way to go. Folks talked about, these flights, you're bombarding us with. Folks, we're not even up to the 2008 pre-recession levels of flights. We're not even up to that point. We're still below that, well below that. Imagine that. Imagine that. We're not even back to how things used to be in 2008. And in 2008, we didn't have this issue. Why? Because the flight patterns weren't what they are today. Folks are talking about expansions. No one's expanding the Burbank Airport. That's just not happening. We are building a newer, safer terminal, but that is not an expansion. We're not looking to expand. Again, like I said, we're not even up to 2008 levels of flights and people involved in those flights. We don't view, just because we represent certain cities doesn't mean that we view anyone outside of those cities as some kind of a foreign element. I mean, someone suggested that. That is just not the case. That's not the case. Obviously, you're impacted. Here's the evidence. We're impacted. This is the #1 issue that this airport is dealing with for the last year, probably, at least a year. And it's going to remain the #1 issue, I assure you. We're impacted. We know you're impacted in a much different way. We realize that, we appreciate that, and we're going to act upon it, I assure you. That's all I have. I don't know if my colleagues want to, yes.
I would like to, because I have
Ms. Devine?
I have a 12 o'clock meeting, so I need to go. But I want everyone to, I do want to address the crowd. I want to thank everybody for being here. We are listening to all of you. And please don't think that we hear this as you complaining. And I can speak for myself, because of these heartfelt pleas and sharing the impacts of the noise in your lives is very meaningful to me, and I think to all of us. I hardly think we can ignore the pain, the anger, and the frustration that you demonstrated today. That's very apparent. I want to mention that a few meetings ago, Mr. Miller mentioned, we talked about this formation of a roundtable. And he mentioned that FAA, I believe it was, said it was up to the airports to come together and to form this roundtable. And none of the other airports were stepping up to do that. And I think today we're seeing that Hollywood Burbank Airport is stepping up to form this roundtable so that you can be heard, you can be part of what is going on in the future. I think it is absolutely, positively important that the airlines be at those meetings. I have talked to pilots, and they have told me that it is the airlines and the pilots who decide how high they fly, how they take off, the altitude, etc. And so it is very important that they be at those meetings so that we can try to convince them of the impact that they're making on your lives. I only wish that the FAA were here this morning to hear you, because you are so powerful in your presentations and in relating the impacts of noise on your lives. And that's so important, I think, for them to hear. And I'm shocked when I hear that they are denying that there's any impact. And believe me, this commission, as far as I know, as far as for myself, we have never denied that this was not a problem. We could see it, we could hear it, and we have been, I think, doing what we can up to this point to try to help. But from this day on, I hope that with the formation of this roundtable and with all the other information that our administrators have today, that we can move forward in a very strong force to make a difference, to try to get the FAA and the airlines to hear what you are saying. That is our job, and I hope that we will take that on today. Thank you.
Commissioner Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's have Commissioner Madison go next. Yeah, for a second.
I don't mind if we get an answer to that, but we should follow the process here. I want to echo the chair that it's not an expansion, it's a replacement of the terminal. It's a minor point and it's an aside, but that is the fact. It's not an expansion. It's crystal clear to me that something has changed at some point in the last couple of years with these flight paths. And it's just helpful for me in terms of thinking about this problem to think very linearly. So it's apparent something has changed, and it's had an unfair negative impact on these communities. I don't think anybody would dispute that. I've been actually looking at Flight Tracker during this meeting, and one can see the flight paths going right over these neighborhoods that the residents are here to tell us about. So I guess I don't think ad hominem attacks, on the commission or on anyone, frankly, are helpful. But I get the frustration. It's sincere, as Paula mentioned. So I guess the first question is, do we have an understanding of what changed?
I don't think we really do understand what's the direct cause, at least right now. I mean, we understand that.
I didn't ask the root cause. Yeah. I asked what changed, if anything.
We're seeing flights going over Studio City that were not going over Studio City a few years ago. We know that was part of the Langeman-Brown report.
So the assertion is that it's next-gen Metroplex. My understanding, I think this commission's understanding, is that that was not implemented at this airport.
That is part of what we're hearing from the FAA, and that is part of what we're working to try to sift through and to determine that, what can be done. And I think this forum that we want to create, that's the way that we can begin to address to the FAA, maybe not what the absolute root cause is, but to come up with recommendations to the FAA that they can then look at and realize that there needs to be some changes, or at least acknowledge that there are issues there. Clearly, there is an impact. We agree with that. This next step that we're taking, I think, is one. It's come to us because all the other efforts didn't work, and now it's how do we create this so that we fulfill the requirements of the FAA to bring them to these meetings and to start to work with us. They may not be an actual member of the group, and I don't anticipate that, but at least to have representatives there, I think, is key for the success for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think in mitigation, not defense, airports are unique creatures, and I think some of the speakers are under the impression that we have the ability to direct pilots or airlines or air traffic controllers. Do we, if I'm wrong about that, speak up. Do we have the ability to direct any of those?
We do not have that ability. We do not have that authority.
I mean, if you look at Santa Monica, they tried to close their airport to mitigate, and they were unable to do that for years and years. And I think now they've entered into some resolution where out in the future they'll actually close the airport. But even closing the airport is not something that an airport has the power to do. So I do think ultimately Congress is going to be extremely important here, because we can't compel the FAA or the airlines to do anything, but Congress, I would think, can. And I know Adam and Brad and one other member, I don't know if it's Tony Cardenas or who it is, but is well aware of this, and I do think there has to be a focus there at Congress. But do we have, I know we have this report, do we have the need to further investigate this as an authority?
I'm not sure what more could be done in advancing the Langeman-Brown report. I think it clearly identified that, yes, there is a change that has happened. Now it's sifting down and trying to identify what happened and when it happened and how can it be addressed. And if it is, as in the Part 175 letter, the dispersal of the departures, those are the things that we need to take a hard look at, and we need to have a lot of hard discussions with the FAA about that.
And then my final question, because I'm sure almost everyone will have comments, but what do we expect the outcome to be of the roundtable, or the possible outcomes?
I would hope that at the end of the process, my intent, my goal is that we have come together and would have recommendations that we could then make to the FAA that we think clearly could alleviate the problems that we are seeing. Now, I can't guarantee what the FAA does with that, but I think we need to be moving towards saying to the FAA, these are changes that we think you need to consider in order to address the noise issues over Sherman Oaks, Studio City, and all the other areas.
Yeah, and again, I would just close by saying, certainly for the electeds like myself on this commission, I'd be surprised if any of us did not run on a platform of quality of life of the residents. And so it is painful to sit here and listen to this tale and to feel powerless. So I want to make sure we're doing everything to the full extent of our power here and have as robust a presence on this as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Madison. Yes, Commissioner Selvage.
Right, in trying to clarify in my mind where we are and what we can do to alleviate the situation, I kind of divide it up into two different types of changes. One type of change is the track over the ground and the altitude at which the aircraft are flying, and the other is FAA procedures. And I separate those because I'm not sure they're related. I'm not convinced that next-gen, Metroplex, RNAV, or whatever else people have referred to as being a cause of this is really the cause. I was a pilot. It's been quite a long time since I flew out of this airport, and air traffic control is much more sophisticated now than when I was flying out of here. Ray Adams, Commissioner Ray Adams, is also a pilot. He kept an airplane here. He's probably frustrated as I am about trying to get a clarification on what exactly is causing the aircraft to turn to the 210 heading sooner, which if they did would probably alleviate a lot of the problem. I don't know why at John Wayne Airport, you know, they climb out faster. Who required them, or who gave them permission to do that? Why are they doing it voluntarily? I don't know any of that, but you know, clarifying these things is going to be very, very important. I want to point out that on 2 mornings at 7 a.m. I went over here to Studio City to listen myself. One time was over near Carpenter School. The other time I went to the home of one of the people that spoke today from 7 to 8 o'clock, and you know, had tea, no brunch, just had a cup of tea and listened to the aircraft. And it was very much like the fellow who held his recording up to the microphone. And one point that I was a little bit skeptical about when people first started making a lot of noise about the noise was the echo effect you get in the mountains. And at her house, standing in the front yard, the house was blocking the view into the valley. I couldn't tell if the airplane was coming from the south or the north. I mean, the echo was that significant. The echo effect up there in the mountains was that significant. So I know it's a very real problem. And I also went to and met the people that live in the house where I lived as a kid over in Toluca Lake. That was midday, and while we were talking, you could look out the kitchen window and see the aircraft going by. So, look, I know it's a real problem. It's not like it was when I was a kid and we lived there as a family, but we heard the aircraft coming out of here all the time. But I think we've got to clarify what the FAA did, if they did anything. I am not convinced that the FAA did anything that the pilots are now following and therefore operating the aircraft differently. So if we can clarify that, I'd be very happy. I agree that Commissioner from Burbank, that we need to have the airlines here, at least a part of this process, to figure out if it's the pilots, if it's the airlines, if it's not the FAA, and it certainly isn't us, because we can't control this.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner Brown.
I'm probably older than anyone in the room. I moved to Burbank in 1943, and I can remember that myself and my 2 brothers rode our bicycles down here to the tracks right behind us and watched the airplanes take off over us. These were a lot of military planes at the time. It was at the end of the war. And I've been here since 1943. And I can tell you this, Burbank is quieter now than it's ever been. The sound is obviously moved away from us. We still have some noise at night and in the early mornings, but not enough to complain about. I don't think there's many Burbank people, unless they're new to the city, that are complaining loud. The old timers have gotten used to it. And old timers are people that have been here 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years. Anybody younger than that and has moved into the valley is going to hear noise that we don't hear. There's nothing we can do to generate a sense of doing anything here to help you. But I will tell you, you're getting more noise than we are getting, and we generate it. So we've done, you know, the airport itself has done as much as they can do to keep it quiet. Because we used to, the citizens of Burbank used to complain, and we were always under attack. I've been on this authority for 18 years now, and I can tell you, today it is quieter than it was 18 years ago. But there's newer planes, there's more planes, but it's not us. We do not control, like my colleagues have said, the FAA. They are the ones. And we will do everything in our power to help you. We're not kissing you off. I will agree with you. You have more noise than we have now. And we generate it. And it's been a change. There definitely has been a change. Anybody tells you it hasn't, just may have moved here 2 weeks ago. But anybody that's been here for a number of years will tell you Burbank is quieter than it's ever been, and you are getting more noise than you ever have. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Karpetian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank everyone for coming as well. This is a real problem. Nobody's denying it. I do have family members, friends, and relatives who live in Studio City, Encino, Sherman Oaks, Toluca Lake area, especially Toluca Lake area. And the noise is there. It's horrendous. This did not happen overnight. Somehow it evolved to where we are today. And we have to find out what happened during the last 2 years that we are where we are today. I'd also like to know what is going on with Van Nuys Airport. There is a meeting, as it was mentioned. Is there anything that FAA is doing with Van Nuys that they're not doing with us? I would like to find that out. The problem is this flight path changed from what it was historically. Why did it change? I don't think we have the answer, and it's really interesting that we do not have that answer. But if we can go back to the flight path that was historically there, I think this issue will go away. So I know it's not under our jurisdiction, or we don't have any control over it, but when you look at our airline schedules, our largest airline that operates out of this airport is Southwest Airlines, which we all love. I love Southwest. I use it all the time because of the number of flights that they have, because of their flexibility, because of the number of locations they fly to, and because of their pricing and their service. So, but if we can have a conversation with them maybe as to if they want to go back to the why did this flight path change. My understanding is that airlines have a lot to do with the way they fly, where do they turn. The pilots have that latitude to make a turn over the 101 freeway or a little bit south of it. I think if we have a conversation with them, the round tables are good, but it's going to take forever. This is an emergency. We understand that. Round tables are good. Signing resolutions are better, but we need to do all of it at the same time. And I think we need to have a serious conversation with our airlines and see what is it that they can do today to, even if they change 30% of their flight paths, it will help a lot. So I think, and I've been in the area, as I said, my friends live in Toluca Lake, and I visit their house frequently, and they just remodeled their house. So they're not here because they're a little bit younger, and you know they're not as home as much as all of you are. So, but it is an issue. So we need to address this issue. It has nothing to do with politics and gaining political favors or what have you. This is an issue that we need to solve. All of you are our constituents, you are our neighbors, you are our constituents. There is no difference between Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, or Studio City, or LA. We are all neighbors. We all live in the same area. If you look at it from a satellite, we are all a dot on that map. So my request would be to see if we can have a conversation, a serious conversation with Southwest Airlines, and see if they come to the table, every other airline will do as well. So that's what I say.
Okay, is that it?
That's
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I had
Yes,
another
Mr.
comment,
Madison.
if I could,
Of
and I
course.
apologize for taking more time, but, you know, we talk about Van Nuys as though it's some free agent. Van Nuys is part of LAWA, correct? LAWA is Los Angeles. And all I know is when Los Angeles wanted to build a football stadium right underneath the flight path at LAX, and the FAA complained about it, Los Angeles rolled the FAA. And that stadium's being built right underneath that flight path. So I suggest that the residents, in addition to the members of Congress, who I think have oversight and budget of the FAA, that they also be advocating with the city of Los Angeles, and that Mr. Krikorian be advocating with the mayor and with, well, okay, then it'd be good to see,
Please.
it'd be good to see LAWA and Van Nuys at this roundtable, wouldn't it? And is that happening? Why not?
They did not accept.
No, you're asking us to make it happen, but we don't control them. That's part of Los Angeles. So I would urge the residents to make sure that Mr. Krikorian and Mayor Garcetti, if necessary, compel LAWA to participate, because Van Nuys is LAWA, and LAWA has more power than this authority, believe me. The other thing is, Orange County has been mentioned several times, John Wayne. It turns out the mayor of Newport Beach, Diane Dixon, is a former longtime Pasadena resident, neighbor of mine, friend of mine. I talked to her recently about this, and suffice it to say that there are big issues at John Wayne as well in terms of flight paths and the like. So it's not all sort of sunshine and balloons in Orange County. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Madison. Nothing.
You know,
Yes, Commissioner Wiggins?
yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Going back to the roundtable, as I understand it, the FAA says this is what we should do. Yeah, let's do a roundtable, but the FAA does not want to participate. Is that the feeling that you get, Mr. Miller? Or
The way I would couch it, Commissioner Wiggins, is that it's the role that they would take. And that's why our next approach, you know, that first approach was to
Right.
have a meeting with the FAA, with the airlines. They do not see that they can lead this initiative if the result is to make recommendations to the FAA about how they should be looking at changing flight departures out of Burbank. With that said, the approach now is, okay, let's sit down and let's talk about how we structure this so that you can attend, you can participate, and the lead role is being assumed by this airport. Staff will be working very diligently to make this happen and get the FAA into these meetings and hear from us ultimately what we think should be done in order to address the problem.
Well, I think the FAA is obviously the key to this, and if they're, you know, they canceled the meeting with the airlines, we were going to have the airlines and the FAA sit down, and at the last minute, they backed out. I have to agree with Mr. Madison, and that's the fact that in addition to L.A., and both Steve and myself know Adam very, very well, I think that Congress has got to be turning the screws on the FAA a little bit harder than what they are. Because if we don't have the FAA at the table listening, if they just won't participate, then I don't see how anything's going to change. I really don't. And I agree with Steve that pressure from Congress is a necessity, because, and I think that they have tried, and I think they need to try and try again. Because once again, without, not being redundant, but without the FAA involved in all this, they're going to be the ones that make the changes. Because my feeling, they made the changes 2 years ago, to be quite frank. But the fact of the matter is that they're the key. And I don't care how we get them at the table, but they have to be at the table or sitting in the audience listening. And it's too bad they couldn't be here today. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, I want to thank everyone that came and spoke today. I assure you once again, this is at the center of our attention. On our part, we will do everything possible within our power, within our jurisdiction, within our authority to resolve this issue. Clearly something happened 2 years ago. I mean, and clearly that's what's causing it. If we're about 1 million passengers below our 2008 numbers, and you're experiencing this now, and this problem didn't exist in 2008, clearly something happened 2 years ago. I mean, clearly, you know, the flight paths were changed, the altitudes, takeoff formulas, whatever it is that they've instructed the airlines to practice, that has changed. So I can't see how there can be any dispute about that. And we know who tells the airlines to implement these changes. I also agree with my colleagues. The path goes through the FAA, and without congressional involvement, we're going to have a very slow and very brutal slog with them. Congress has to be involved. They're the federal representatives. They're in Washington. FAA is a federal authority. They have to be intimately involved in this problem, and we have to jointly encourage them, push them, make sure that they're first of all cognizant. I know our Adam Schiff knows about this problem very much, but we need everyone to be involved to make sure that we get to where we want to be. And I'll be very honest, we can tell, because I don't want to fill you with false hope, we can tell the airlines to change 30% of their change, you know, their flight patterns or their turns. We can tell them 10%, we can tell them 1%. They're not going to do any of it. They're not going to do it, folks. I don't want you to have, you know, expect that we're going to tell them tomorrow, and then a week later, oh my God, everything's changed. Just not going to happen. We can try it, and we'll keep trying it. And this assumes that we haven't tried it. This assumes we haven't tried it. We'll try again. I just don't want you to have false expectation. That's all. I'm just being honest with you. So thank you for coming, and we're going to have a monthly report on this issue every month.
Let me ask a question,
yeah, go ahead.
please.
Go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
Is there a permanent FAA director been assigned? No. Or do we still have an acting one for years?
Nominated.
Who nominated him?
I think it's a rhetorical question, clearly, yeah. Just saying.
All right, well, I think we've got a major problem, and this probably should go congressional. Maybe the President of the United States can get involved in this. This is not just don't laugh. This is not just a local problem. This is a nationwide problem. Every state is having a problem. Exactly. Nobody is listening to them. I think here, let's do something about it. Let's try it. Send a letter congressionally. Since we don't have a director, it must be the president then, right? Who appoints him?
President.
Okay. My suggestion is we send a letter to the President of the United States asking us are telling us what we can do and telling the rest of the country what they can do with their problem that are joining us to get this thing solved. We got an election coming up. I think this issue is more important than the election. So I'm not trying to make fun of anything, but I seriously agree, since we do not have a director from of the FAA, we're just shooting ourselves in the foot. Who's going to listen to us? Who has the power up there to listen to us? An acting director does not, because they haven't done anything now, and this has been going on for years. So that's all I got to say on this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. And on that point, we're going to close this item and move on to the consent calendar. So thank you very much. Consent calendar first, item number 5.
Move approve. Would you?
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
All in favor? Any
Mr. President,
opposed?
before you take on, there's a clarification staff would like to make on the minutes of the commission meeting. Commissioner Devine did not vote on the item for the Verdugo item because of the item carried a memorandum between the authority and the city of Glendale. So the vote is 6-0, 1 abstention, and 2 absent.
Which is fine. So we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, that item passes. Why don't we move on to item number 7, which is items for commission information?
Mr. Tom Janowitz will be up to make a presentation regarding the parking revenue statistics and the transportation network statistics.
Wonder if in light of the hour, we can just receive and file the written report?
We can receive all the file, we can produce them and put them as notified if that's the commission's.
If that's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much for that. Now we'll move on to item number 4, public comment.
Thank you and good morning.
Oh, you're good.
You're done.
Oh,
We just passed it.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
There are no public comments.
No public comments, Carter. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 8, commissioner comments. And we have no commissioner comments.
No, I made mine.
You made mine. I think we all made ours today. So thank you for that. And if we have a motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
we are adjourned at 12 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone.